I'm here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
You're live.
Hi, Brianna.
All right, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Finance for Tuesday, March 15th. Let's open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none. All right, let's go on to the budget discussions, and since Park and Rec is already at the table, Mary, it's your turn to drive.
Thank you. Well, first, thanks to everybody here for allowing us to come and to speak on behalf of our department and brag a little bit. I know how valuable your time is. I do tend to watch the meetings from home, and so I have a small idea of how much work you all put in, and thank you for that as well. We'll just jump right into some of the slides we have prepared. So our mission statement is to respond to the ever-changing needs of our residents by providing the foundation for enhanced community interaction and enjoyment. leagues, BBSA, Brookfield Lacrosse, Pop Warner, and Brookfield Soccer. We've maintained parks, school grounds, sports fields, and municipally owned properties, including the Still River Greenway and Town Park Beach, throughout pandemic challenges and weather swings, from drought to extreme rain conditions, wind events, and even the remnants of Storm Ida in September 2021. We have completed renovations to the Brookfield High School hitting cage in August 2021, with the grading and the base work done by the Parks Department and turf installation donated by Field Turf. We did the Wisconsin Middle School's courtyard clearing in August 2021 in advance of the school year. The courtyard was identified as a priority item by school administration to allow for additional outdoor access for students throughout the pandemic. The Brookfield High School's 90-foot baseball field, which is currently the only 90-foot field in town, was kept in playable condition while experiencing unprecedented use. Working around the loss of 3 fields at Huckleberry, the 2 baseball and 1 grass multi-use field, while accommodating youth program needs by setting anchors for multiple base distances, increasing grooming and repairs in existing fields. And then our capital projects and equipment purchases, including the replacement of the Brookfield High School back turf, which was on budget and on time for the fall 2021 season. Parks Department garage repairs, the Brookfield High School stadium field laymore scrape and top dress, zero-turn mower purchases, Bobcat tool cap replacement, and other projects in process. And again, kind of getting back to the key indicators for parks, and we go back to our contacts. So a small sample of the contacts through parks would be the Still River Greenway, which according to the Connecticut Trail Census in 2021 counts, we had 163,272 uses or contacts with our department. Kids Kingdom Playground, if I take a conservative estimate of 100 kids and parents times 270 days a year, 75 days a year, that's 27,500 contacts. We think about a single baseball team playing at Graysbridge Field for the spring season. We have 12 kids, 10 weeks, 2 times a week, that's 240 contacts. Foursome of doubles tennis players playing once a week, May through October, 4 people times 24 days is 96 contacts. And a family of 4 that visits the town beach once a week during this season would be 4 times 15 visits or 60 contacts. So it's really easy to see that Brookfield Parks and Recreation easily surpasses the 250,000 contacts that would be amassed by a typical agency. Our challenges and hardships for parks in the fiscal year 2023. We have aging playgrounds at Center and Huckleberry Hill schools with limited funds for repairs. How to squeak by until Kenwood Lake Elementary School fully opens while still providing safe and appropriate play areas at existing schools. With the new school opening delayed, we'll be managing existing and new school areas during construction and transition from Huckleberry to Kenwood Lake Elementary in January 2023. And just like any other department, we have our inflation concerns. 7% plus inflation puts us in a position of having to stretch our existing budget dollars. When proposing our operating budget for fiscal year 2023, which we submitted back in the middle of January, we included a then known increase for the cost of propane and estimates for long maintenance and snow maintenance contracts. Our long maintenance contract cost is now known. It's the same as the estimate that we had, and snow removal is still to be determined for fiscal year 23.
And it's the same thanks to you negotiating with them.
We did negotiate them down quite a bit, yes. Equipment maintenance, equipment replacement, pandemic-related supply chain issues, delivery issues, and cost increases for parts, services, and new equipment, not only for the equipment, but for many of our regular supplies. We just placed our order for spring paint, and we were advised by the vendor who's on state contract that we should order before the 14th of March. And so we ordered before the 14th of March, and we paid $747 less than we would have if we ordered it today. So the costs just keep increasing, and it's really very challenging for us to predict what costs are going to be in the future. And when we submitted our budget, we really had no idea that inflation was going to take this turn, and so we kept most things flat, and now we're going to be in a position possibly where we're going to have to make some harder decisions as we go on through the next fiscal year because we just don't know what's going to be happening. And then high usage at all our facilities has certainly increased demands on our department, including additional need for garbage removal. Our next priority form actually requests additional funding for garbage removal contract for an additional 1 day per week, so we'd like to talk about that a little bit more. And our department-specific outside services line request was reduced by $15,200. This reduction is somewhat hidden as the additional cost of wheel loader rental was added to the line with no corresponding increase. And we're hoping to chat about that just a moment too. And our goals for next year for parks, we certainly want to continue to provide a high level of service to the community, maintaining facilities to expected standards. We want to innovate snow removal and future maintenance practices for Brookfield's newest asset, Kenwood Lake Elementary. And we want to work on the cross-training of full-time employees, specifically in the areas of irrigation systems, ball field maintenance, and playground maintenance. And the effect of the goals on the budget, if any. We do ask for an increase in operating and our non-recurring maintenance items to maintain facilities and equipment. That's a new line for us. It did not exist in our budget last year, but it was moved from capital, and I know there's been some discussions around that already. And also funding to rent a wheel loader in our operating and to purchase a pusher box in our capital. And for our other budget items to adjust, again, our next priority form, we're looking for an additional $6,400 to allow us to have a third day of contracted garbage removal. Currently on Mondays and Fridays, we have a contract for somebody to come in and empty all the cans and pick up around Town Hall and also at Cadigan Park. And doing that 2 days a week really frees up our staff to do other tasks that are needed as well. And the goal would be to have an additional third day, again, taking a little bit more burden off our staff to allow us to get to a few more items. And truthfully, one of my other goals is to allow Chris, who is our very hardworking park supervisor, a little bit more time for some of his administrative duties, because he's working shoulder to shoulder with the guys. And then he also has, the entire administration of the Parks Department on his shoulders as well. And I would love for him to have some time to be able to devote to that, before 6 or 7 o'clock at night. We do have the new budget request for cleaning the Parks Department garage once a week. That's gone through the budget process, nothing's been changed, but we did ask for $2,000. Our Parks Department has been getting cleaned once a month, and most town buildings are cleaned at least a couple of times a week. We're just asking for it to be cleaned for once a week. And happy to talk about if anybody has any questions or comments about anything we have in our non-recurring maintenance items. For our capital requests, I know that the Capital Ad Hoc Committee has done just a stand-up job going through all that already. We don't disagree with any of the decisions that have been made. I would just like to state that we actually submitted our capital requests back in October, and at that time that we submitted them, we were given the instruction to not account for any cost changes or kind of inflationary escalation numbers. And so I would just ask that that's kept in mind, and perhaps some process can be put in place to allow us to continue to purchase what has been approved so far. Should it be approved at referendum if we do fall short, because we were just following the processes that we were asked to follow for those. I do want to also take a moment to speak in support of other department requests, specifically the Board of Education's paving request for Wisconsin Middle School. Sometimes it's easy to take for granted how one department, even from Board of Ed to Park and Rec, can interrelate, but we are responsible for plowing and winter maintenance. It's in our best interest for them to have better paving and concrete work, because we can do a better job for them, provide a safer place for them. So that would be our ask, that you please support that. And then Streetscape Phase 6, again, we're certainly huge advocates of the Still River Greenway. Streetscape Phase 6 is a good way for us to continue north on Four Corners. We would ask for you to please look favorably upon that request as well. And we're happy to talk a little bit more about that $15,200 if you're agreeable to that. And I do, again, want to thank you. Your time is so valuable. Thank you so much for letting us come and present, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Your charge for your programs, did you increase them on an annual basis, or are they flat? So what was your increase on that?
I couldn't give you a percentage increase. We're trying to keep pace with, we try to make between 20 and 30% overall off of all of our programs. And so during a pandemic year, that's a little bit more difficult because we haven't been able to offer as many programs until very recently. But we do try to keep pace with meeting our expenses and then meeting the other expenses that we have with brochure printing and things along those lines as well.
So do you see an increase in the program usage then this year, so that would increase over prior year?
Do we see well, we're coming out of the pandemic, so
Understand.
so it would be hard for me to quantify if we have more people today than we did, certainly today than last year at this time for sure.
Okay, the snow removal, I thought we approved that for this year. That's for next year's, I got 15,000 in for this year's snow removal.
That was this
So
year.
we need it again for next year, even though we're gonna be in the school by January, that half the people are gonna be in the school. This was an interim to get us through the thing, so we're
No,
gonna.
not completely. There was a discussion because the design of the parking lot, you can't push it over into snowbanks, so you needed that box pusher.
Only due to the construction fences. Once
No,
the
I thought it was also
construction
the design,
fences
it
were
was
down.
also the design of the parking lot of Candlewood Lake Elementary School. I thought that was part of the discussion because of how it's laid out.
it was the fences too.
The fences
It
was
was
part
both.
of it, that was the more immediate reason?
No, it wasn't, because why would we only appropriate 15,000 and not talking about buying a long-term vehicle? This was a stopgap.
We're gonna buy the pusher box.
So.
I mean, maybe you're right. I mean, but I thought this was just a stopgap. When we approved the 15,000 with Steve, this was just to get us through this winter.
But I thought we were gonna reevaluate later on,
Okay.
but I don't know.
All right, all right.
So we
Okay,
also
I'm sorry.
have part of a winter, the kids aren't moving out of Huckleberry until January, so.
Correct, over the break, so you don't have to plow between December 20th and, from December 20th on, there's nobody going to school.
I don't know what the construction company has planned for the demo, but
So when we had presented the need for the equipment for it was a Cat 908 at the time, and now we have a case. The presentation was twofold. One was that with the new parking area and the design of the new parking area when the new school does open, that we had concern with our existing manpower and equipment that we would be able to adequately clear it. And the second concern was that the more immediate concern that we had was that we would not be able to clear the snow during construction because of the positioning of the fences. So whereas if Huckleberry had no fences, of course we could use our normal practices that we've been doing for forever, not an issue. For this year, issue because of the fences. After the fences are removed, still an issue because of the new parking lot and how that's been designed. And so I think the thought process, if I'm understanding correctly, was that perhaps a second-year rental would be an opportunity for us to get a better idea once those parking lots begin to take shape, if this is going to be something that would be needed for the long term, or if it's something that is going to have served its purpose and that we can think of other reasons or other ways that we can address the issue.
That's what I remember too.
Right. That could be very well wrong. So,
Doesn't have any-
It's a box.
it doesn't. I thought I would have went a different way then.
It's kind of like
Right.
I think we just didn't know, we wanted to see what it ultimately would turn out to be, to know if we really needed that piece of equipment versus something else. It wasn't just, I think the request to purchase it originally was because it would be used for Candlewood Lake Elementary School as well as.
And
Correct.
I think we, like,
Fences.
I think we also said we're not buying anything midstream,
All right,
mid-budget cycle.
yeah.
We'll do whatever's needed immediately, and then we'll look at it as capital.
Okay,
now.
yeah, all right, makes sense now.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Not that I'm disagreeing.
No, not stop. All right, the 64,000 for the garbage is an extra ask now?
6,400.
6,400. 6,400?
That was our next priority for him.
Okay,
Through the back of your book.
right. Okay.
So that's for a third pickup at 2 locations only, correct? Will there be additional pickups elsewhere that aren't included in the contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Dan, you have any questions?
So you've been through, we don't have to go through the capital list, what's in, what's out, line by line, but you've been through what's currently in the budget, and you're good with what's there?
With the capital?
Yeah, with the capital?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, then no, I don't have any questions.
Go ahead, Ryan.
The non-recurring maintenance items, it looks like you guys asked for 60. The selectmen cut out 30. Can you just, give me an idea of what's in there? I'm assuming, I think that's added this year. We talked about like playground mulch. Is there other things that are in there?
They are other things, and let me just get to that page so I can speak in specifics instead of making things up as I go.
And it does look like a lot was cut out, but there was the 22,000 for the beds for the trucks that, in the capital, they were switched to beds instead of full trucks. They were in here, so they were kind of double, so
Gotcha.
it's
I
only an
remember that,
8
yep.
cut and not a 30 cut.
Yep, okay.
So the requests that we have for this year are the truck beds that Marcia was just discussing, backstop repair at the high school for
Okay.
the Cadigan Park turf fields to top dress with crumb rubber, Williams Park tennis courts repairs, and then to repair the fence around the batting cage at the high school that we did the work on over the
Got it,
summer.
okay.
I'm just not seeing the 15,000 reduction in my spreadsheet, just wondering where. I see 57 here.
I can pull that up.
Let's go through that. Yes. Go back to the garbage removal. That's just for Cadigan, the two fields, correct? One more time?
Cadigan and Town Hall.
What's the town hall? What are we doing with the town hall?
Garbage removal
From the
is
fields only?
from fields and all the cans.
Is that all year round, or is that more just during the summer when
It's-
the concerts and all that kind of stuff?
It's about 32 weeks a year that we contract out, so usually from the beginning of April through the end of October.
And that's contracted out.
Correct. And we also do it in-house as well because we couldn't wait that long between removing garbage, but it does take some of the pressure off our department.
So with respect to that department-specific outside services, you should see that that was cut $5,750. It's a $15,200 increase to add the rental of the snow removal equipment. Because they had asked for it in capital, when it was cut with capital, they said if you cut it in capital, we need to put it here. It's a reduction of $5,950 for the extra mowing at 43 Silver Mine. And I can't remember that whole story, but that was tacked on to the mowing contract because we bought it after the mowing contract, and how are we gonna cut it? I can't remember now.
It was negotiated into the new lawn mowing contract.
Thank you. And then 15,000 was removed to, Mary had given on her worksheet some specific contract increases that she was concerned about with the multi-year contracts. And then after the contract increases, it was then reduced to the actual history. That's where that money came from.
So it was reduced before it went to the first selectman? Or,
No, it was all that were for selectmen cuts that it was all in the first selectman's budget was the 5,000 whatever.
sorry, I'm just not following the numbers in the spreadsheet.
The 5,750
Yep.
should be what shows up as first selectman cuts.
Yep, yep.
The little notes on the side are just mine to remind me when we were doing it of how they got there.
Anything?
I think you guys got it already.
I have one more, actually, I forgot about.
Go ahead.
And if you can just fill me in, fill us in on the status and the shape that the fields are on at the high school, and what the schedule is for replacement when they're needed. How bad are they now? Something that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have some notes on that. I had
Cool.
a feeling like the conversation. So we had the field. The fields are tested for GMAX. So basically, GMAX would be the impact that a player would have if they fell and hit their head. And so the GMAX ratings help us. It's a piece of the puzzle to understand how much longer a field has before we need to consider replacement. And so both the fields, the new field that we had installed and the stadium field, were tested in August, and both did fine. Of course, the back field, which is brand new, did much better, but the stadium field is holding its own. To give you an idea, when they do the impact testing, anything over 200 is a fail. And so the average when they did the new field was 113. We compare that to the average for the existing stadium field, which is 156. And there are areas that are higher and areas that are lower, but the average of the 10 different spots that they test is 156. So you can see already that the numbers are much higher on the stadium field. It's the opinion of people who install and work on turf fields that we have another solid year on the stadium field. We feel comfortable. We did some work on it this past August. We did a full top dress with the Larimore scrape, and I do think that the athletic director was quite pleased with the results of that, and that it's playing well. We think that we bought another year. So our proposal would be for full funding for stadium field replacement in the summer of 2023. That is going to be a lot more expensive than what we just paid to replace the backfield, and that's for a variety of reasons. One is that the stadium field, if we're looking at it, it has the D zones that are used for track elements as well, and so that doesn't exist on the backfield, that exists in the stadium field. Another reason is the stadium field, because of the track that goes around it, we need to have lacrosse netting around it. So right now we put up lacrosse netting. You can actually have it built into the field. It's safer, it's better. We want to have that in the stadium field. And the last reason would be that there's a lot of drainage issues on the stadium field. If you go there after heavy rains, I've actually seen the logo floating. That really shouldn't be happening. And so we're going to be working with a potential vendor to do some testing to really allow us to understand how much of the subbase of the stadium field needs to be addressed, and how much we can reuse. So because of that, we have a rough budget estimate between basically 1.3 and 1.43 million dollars for just the stadium field with the D zones. And then along with that, we also need to start thinking about the track replacement. So when the stadium field was last put in, there were some issues between the track and the stadium field installation, which I'm not quite sure if they've ever been fully resolved with the drainage and the relationship between one and the other. In my mind, it makes a lot of sense if the track is on its last legs, and we know that it is, that we do that both together as a project, and that way the drainage is being addressed by the same vendor at the same time, and I really feel like it's going to be to the long-term benefit to do it that way. So for the track, our working estimate right now is between $752,000 and $802,000 for track replacement. And talking to the Park and Rec Commission, there's been some discussion of keeping this 6-lane track, but actually making an 8-lane sprint to allow for more track and field events. So if we're going to make an improvement, the time to do it is when we're replacing the track. And it would not be at such a significant cost to the town that it shouldn't be considered. So that's basically a brief synopsis of what we're looking at.
What do we have in reserves, Marcia?
I
Well,
don't,
for the, Yeah.
I don't know that we have reserves. The stadium turf field, we have 150,000 of reserves. I don't think we have anything in reserves for the track.
Yep, and we have 100 in this budget. Okay. All right. That's an extra bond. Okay. Thank you.
What were the capital items you're worried about inflation on? You mentioned it in the presentation.
Thank you. So, I mean, we got a recent estimate on the tennis court construction, but that could change as well. That would be one item.
So what was original versus current?
We haven't gotten an estimate since the fall. At that time, the estimate that we had is put in for our budget line.
241,560. Oh, that's the reserve. Plus 466.
466, 560.
What was the contingency put on that already?
That's the estimate that we received.
Yeah, but every estimate always seems to have a 10% contingency on the bottom line of this that we've received recently. Was there any on yours?
No.
Okay. And they were left in, correct? Or taken out of the budget?
The tennis courts are still there, and the outfield drainage is still there. And the track replacement reserve, you added back 100.
In the outfield drainage is the high school we're talking, right? That's the, so that backs up next to the football field, which are we okay when we do this other drainage that we're not gonna, we couldn't combine all that into one, and, or are we, they separate or need to be separate?
So the way that the turf fields are designed, they're typically designed to drain by themselves without anything around them. So because of the elevation or grade change between the two portions of the property, I would feel pretty comfortable in stating that the grass fields could be addressed as a very separate issue. It's also a more pressing issue for the town. It's been a problem that we've been struggling with. You know, the scholastic season for sports starts on March 19th, and anybody who has baseball players or softball players in their family knows what the fields look like around March 19th. And so our goal is to try to get the fields open and playable. Certainly March 19th is not realistic most years, but by the end of March or very early April. And being able to address some of those drainage issues, we feel will put us in a much better place to be able to do that. And then to also allow the high school to not lose as many home games due to rain events, because currently they're losing quite a few rain games or events due to rain. The AD has to get buses, change plans around. It's a problem that affects more than just our department. That number we were given, the 220, was actually from an engineering firm that we had talked to back in 2020, and we are engaging with an engineering firm now. We actually are in the process of awarding a bid to lowest qualified bidder in order to start with that process. So we're still pretty confident in that number, but again, I do want to state that that's a 2020 number. And we'll certainly strive to do work and to schedule work that will come in under that number.
So you put the offer out, we've got numbers in, and we're talking about awarding this now?
So the engineered drawing is going to be awarded. We've had conversations with the vendor, but they haven't officially received the information for the town. So within the next month or so, we should have much better information on what their probable costs are going to be for that work.
The
And some,
engineer drawing was in last year's budget.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, thank you, Marcia.
So we're not really awarding, we're just getting the engineering drawing in to figure out what we exactly need.
Correct,
So then that has to go through a bid process again.
correct, yes.
All right, I think I'm all set. Brianna, you have any questions?
No, I think I'm pretty good.
All right, any questions you have of us before you leave?
No, I truly just want to thank you all again very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Mary, can I ask you one question? The turf fields, what's their useful life? I see here the asphalt tracks are 20 years. What's the useful life on the turf fields?
Yeah, so old turf fields were about 12 to 15, 15 to 17. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap in between the two possibly, but you can also resurface an asphalt track outside of having to do more significant work to it. So it still might kind of work out in terms of planning going forward for that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also want to thank you guys in your department. You did some really innovative activities during the pandemic and all that, just keeping the community, keeping those contacts. And when we looked in the brochure and saw virtual programs or take-home projects and everything, that was really, you kind of expected it to come to a screeching halt, but you guys kept stuff going. And even when you did the ski trips, you planned it out so that if there were exposures in quarantine, there was enough time in between trips. Like they spread them out every 2 weeks, so except the snow kind of impacted that a little bit, snow and rain. But I think you guys did a nice job working around that.
I agree.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
One last question. What in the phase 6, what's the park and recs other than the usage of the greenway? There's no other.
No other concern of us other than the greenway, the extension of the greenway.
Thank you. All right. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you so
much.
Land use?
I have texted her, she's doubling up, she's got a land use meeting downstairs, so I've texted her to come on up, so we should hopefully see her when she's at a good point that she could do that.
So did I read this right or hear this right? We're gonna need 2.3 million next year
Yes.
for capital.
Yep. We're in the bond.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard too.
And, okay. And police might need something from their side? So we're already bonding,
$4 million.
yeah, minimum.
Yep.
Out the gate.
Yeah.
Again, this is where that plan,
Yeah.
we can't keep taking the deep
Yeah.
end of the hose every year. At some point, we gotta.
This wasn't on your capital committee. That's what
It was. She asked for $800,000 reserve.
Right.
So,
$800,000.
I mean, that's not really a reserve.
Right.
That's-
Okay, let's go to the scorecard, Marcia, while we're waiting, we'll just go over that please quick. And I'm still lost now on this snow removal, I gotta be honest with you. So now this is gonna be an annual, 15,000 every year, it's gonna be part of the snow removal?
At
Is
least until
that,
we
or-
see how removing snow there is going to be. I mean, that was the impression I had, is that, once they get, maybe they can figure out that they can use the
I'm
machine.
kind of-
I mean,
kind of with
15,000,
Glenn on
I
this
could get the
one. I am a
whole
little
parking lot
confused.
plowed for 15,000 for the whole year on an outside service. What are we talking, 6 times a year?
That was my argument.
And they cancel school prior to snow anyway, so they were talking maybe 1 or 2 times a year it's critical. I don't understand this $15,000 need. I'm really,
We have that machine there at Huckleberry right now, and I don't think they've really used it for an event. Like you said, anytime we have snow, it's the school's canceled.
And I thought we also talked about it coming out of the surplus for the school, like attributing it to the school project.
That was,
No,
that was for the.
That was for the
construction
construction time, because it was a direct
Right.
cause by the
Okay.
school, but Mr. Checo didn't want to do that, and we figured we could absorb it, and we didn't push him. Because he's still gonna have a surplus of like $1 million on the school side. They're projecting at least $1 million. But I still get lost on this 15,000 annual now, or whatever we're gonna do to buy new equipment or whatever for a small section.
Yeah.
We should be able to farm out that whole parking lot for 15,000 for the year. Forget the,
I think she looked at that last summer when she proposed the purchase of the Bobcat, and I remember at one of the Board of Selectmen meetings, she went over all the options. And at the time, the board agreed on doing this rental.
I actually
Because-
don't remember that, because I remember I questioned her on that, because I know people that do award, like I think Harry's in-laws do Bethel, or they did Bethel last year, and those rates are not that high. So that's why I was like, why don't we consider that? And she said she didn't reach out, she didn't have a quote on that yet, so I don't know.
I remember I had also asked her why, if the other side of the fence was being plowed by the construction company, why they couldn't just hop over the other side of the fence and plow for
We
us.
had asked that too, and there was a reason.
Prevailing wages,
Yeah, that's right,
and the timing thing.
that's right. Yeah,
it was more the timing, I think. Yeah, the prevailing wage with the timing. Seems like a lot of money to spend for 3 times.
Yeah.
I just really stuck on that. Alright,
So what's
let's-
the alternative for those 3 times?
I don't know.
Yep.
So you got a good point.
Yeah.
Well, the alternative, I think, is they're using their current trucks, and it may take a little longer, but that's, I think that's the alternative, right? I mean, they're plowing Huckleberry now, so, or they did last year, so.
No, it's, yeah, but the parking lot has changed.
No,
Alright,
I
let's go to the
agree.
scorecard.
Yep.
Let's go to the scorecard.
Alright, so on the scorecard, I made 2 changes since I sent it to you this afternoon. That I had forgotten to take the fuel costs out, the contingency for the fuel costs, so that's 50,000 that I took out.
Okay.
And then there was a conversation with the Board of Ed, and I did they email everybody? They haven't, it's not finalized they haven't discussed it with their board yet, but the Finance Committee talked about the potential of taking $50,000 out of their budget. So that number changed. Revenue, when we talked about it last time, I said, oh, let's throw in 600,000, but I overrode the 225. So that's what I wanted to talk about on this page. So that's why it's higher than what you had, what we had talked about last night. So the scorecard is, we're at 3.27 with that.
We're taking out 50 for BOE.
Yep, 50 from BOE, 50 from the contingency for, and then reallocating the numbers for, based on that schedule that I sent for the one-time revenues.
And we reduced the extra sales down, correct? For extra revenue, I called sales by mistake.
We
We took it back from, I thought, no, we still got the 250 in on the high side, right? Or
yes, we still have the 250 in.
Plus the 100, that's plus the 100, so we added 150 to that.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go back to that fuel contingency line, the discussion about it.
I thought we were also updating the collection rate too, to 99
That's kind of built into the
To 150.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're gonna do one or the other.
Right.
what exactly? I
That's
thought
kind of
that's how we
the collection
sort
rate's a
of.
part of it, is another 50-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need to change the title of this to contingency for inflation over bids and add a little bit of money in there? Are we gonna penalize these departments that went out and got bids and now they're gonna feel a 5% increase? Do we put it in there so they came to us with a number, if it goes over that number, they're still allowed to buy the equipment and we cover it under approval by the Board of Selectmen? So if they went out to buy a $70,000 vehicle and now it's 77,000. Are we gonna shut it down? Are we gonna penalize them to find 7,000 in their budget process? Or are we gonna say, if you can show us the, you know, the first quote that you had versus the actual coming in, we have to cover that? Mary?
Well, we've kept them so lean that if all of a sudden they had to find, let's say, use your example of $7,000, that'd be pretty hard for most departments.
Lean?
Yeah, I mean, use the checks in place that, you know, we don't wanna inflate costs and then find out that things stabilize a little bit more in the economy, but, I like having the control of the contingency line items.
Ryan?
I like to quantify it if we're actually putting a number in, so if we can go through the budget and the capital and just see what amounts could be hitting, and then say 5% of that, and then you get a number, because if we just throw 50 grand in there and it's 150, it doesn't really, yeah, it helps you a little bit, but, you know, it maybe might not be as much as we think it's gonna be. Maybe take half of it, or whatever the case is, just have a policy.
Dan, your thoughts?
That's a good idea.
So Marcia, can we do that?
Quantify, yes.
Like, can we take all the capital that people got quotes on? Except for the police radios, we're still on that. So I mean, other than that, what do we have going in? And see what 7% does.
So that's gonna be a high number because we've not only, we've got like 10 million between ARPA and all the other ones that, but I'll.
Okay, so we're talking about, so if it's a high number, how do we handle it if it happens? How do we say no to things? I mean, that's the,
So we generally have surpluses in that fund that, and we've thrown some old surpluses in there, that Ricky principle. So we do have in capital non-recurring $1.7 million. So we could look to that, but then it wouldn't be available for one-time revenue,
Right.
so maybe it's better to do it this way.
Well, the ARPA stuff should just be restricted to ARPA. That if something is overspent on
Yeah,
ARPA, then
it's-
something else from ARPA gets taken
Okay.
out. I think.
Because they have a buffer that isn't allocated.
are we going to have a policy about this that it can't go over 10%? Or it's a no-go, or is there an upward limit, or? Well, sorry, Tara, but these are all things that might face us, and,
That's what
Yeah.
that's what I've been saying. I mean, I mean,
I don't have no
it's
answer.
the needs versus the wants again, so, you know, not getting a car, you just might not get that car, but at what point? You know, we're almost at 8% now, so.
Right. I
mean,
don't,
now's not
I'm
the
asking,
time to buy a
I don't
car,
have an answer,
period.
I'm asking for thoughts that we don't wanna get trapped out, and we say, oh, we approved this vehicle, and all of a sudden, the 50,000 vehicle's 70,000, and now we're trying to hunt 20,000 on the backside.
Which is why I left the vehicle out in the first place, because
Yeah.
now is just not a great time to buy a car in general.
But it applies to everything though, right now, even like I say, the 441 it applies to. Do we, if it goes to 460, 480, or how are we gonna fund that? Once we approve it, we're in it now, how do we fund it to cover the true cost? Or do we say, anything over 10% is a no-go?
Come back to us.
Come back to us
Yeah.
before,
I'll take a look at that.
is that okay for us to do, legal for us to do?
That's a long answer, but it's what we've been doing.
Okay.
But if this fund was set up by the reserve fund in the state statutes, we have to go to town meeting to add to anything.
Right.
Okay, all right, let's go on to land use.
Can you,
Oh.
I just want to forget, can you go back to, this is going to take 2 seconds. Can you go back to revenue for 1 second?
Yeah.
And the intergovernment transfer? The 225?
Yeah. Operating budget, revenue. So
Shouldn't that be
there's-
zero?
So it's now 0 because that was coming from the ARPA fund. So we have the 2 different types of revenue, use of bond
You can
proceeds.
walk through afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd like to introduce you to Rochelle. Rochelle
Hi.
is our new land use director, and we love her. So I hope you do too. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Sure.
Dan, you want to start?
Sure.
Go right around.
I'm Dan.
Nice to meet you.
Dan DeVos, it's nice to meet you.
I'm Ryan Rodinas. Nice to meet you.
Glenn Rooney, nice to meet you.
Eileen Cook.
Mary Capiello?
Thank you.
That makes him seem a little friendlier.
Oh, yeah.
And Brianna's on the line.
Oh, Brianna.
She is. Oh, hi, Brianna.
I'm the voice behind the curtain.
She's the one that's pulling all the strings.
You're
too.
the most frightening.
All right. So we'll just move right through it.
It's short and sweet, yeah.
And
Very sweet.
Rochelle's been here a month and a half.
Yep.
Awesome.
So do you want me to present this? We have many accomplishments during the last fiscal year. Wetlands Commission reviewed and decided upon 42 permits. The Zoning Commission did that for 69 permits, the Planning Commission for 5, and the Zoning Board of Appeals granted 30 variances, which is a huge number. And I asked the powers that be in the office why that was, because it's unusual to have that kind of a number. And it turned out that there was some kind of I think the DOT or something took some land, and so they had to, all those properties along that road needed variances. So, but normally, I think in a normal year, you'd be granting about, 6 variances max. You should be. Otherwise, your regulations are wrong. Your zoning regulations are wrong.
First thing Thank you.
Hi. So I've pulled some key performance indicators that we might consider. And some of this data is available. I just haven't, had time to pull those together. But the number of permits issued from each of those boards would be very useful to have, and it would help us. A lot of things, other data come from that, because every time a permit is issued, there's a number of steps that the secretaries, the administrative assistants, have to go through, and that's it's a huge drain on their time. So those permits are really what drives most of their work, or should. The percentage of applications that require public hearings, that's another drain. It's just, if you have, the more public hearings you need, the longer it takes to approve these applications. The more time is needed from everyone involved. Of course, as you know, the commissioners are volunteers, so in that sense, maybe it's not that onerous, but it demands a lot from the staff. The total permit revenues would be useful to know, and that's pretty easy to get that information. But we also have to pay, of course, the state fees and the publishing of the legal notices, which has, I think that those fees have gone, pretty high now. So I would recommend, raising the application fees. Number of agent approvals that don't require a commission hearing at all. That would be another useful number, I think, to have. It makes the whole process much quicker. So that's about that. Hardships. So we have, I've noticed a lack of, despite the fact that we just spent, I guess the town spent about $30,000, and we had a grant of about $130. On these lovely cubicles, the noise level in there is just, it's just impossible for me to work. I don't know how anybody else does. So there's, a lot of activity down there, a lot of talking. People are now talking over the walls of the cubicles, and it makes everything that much more difficult to be productive and effective. And then sometimes I have, somewhat private conversations because I am the department head. So that can be another issue. I've had to, from time to time, leave the room with my cell phone and talk in private. And then I think also too, for the registered nurse, that part-time nurse that we have, I've overheard conversations that seem a little bit too personal for my comfort.
that she's having with people on the telephone mainly, and then she was using the land use conference room as her vaccine station, and and there are 2 doors to that room now, and so it's just very awkward. People are going, oh, sorry. Then I guess, and that's mostly that for there. Goals for next year. So I think one of the things that's been brought to my attention, and I from my own experience with all the documents on the computer over the years that each different administrative assistant has been creating, every time they create a document, they seem to just have no idea where to put it, why to put it where, and so it's this miasma that has slowed me down tremendously. There's no rhyme or reason to these folders that the admins have put on there. Some are in capitals, some are in lowercase, just in case you have call-outs. These are capitals; they must be important. And you'll find 6 different documents of 6 different zoning regulations that are labeled current, most current, currentest current, and so it's just a real time suck. You've got to be able to pull the proper information out as quickly as possible. So I'm going to try to develop a system of labeling these files and try to get some order so that we're more efficient down there. We need a policies and procedures manual. There's nothing in place to say what happens if X, Y, Z. If so and so's not here, what do we do? If this happens, that happens. There's just no policy whatsoever. So that's something I'm going to institute. I think training and cross-training, training the staff, and maintaining training, of course, but also to cross-train the staff. I mean, some of them don't know what the other one does at all, and can't pitch in if they need help. And I think some of them don't even seem to really understand what we're actually doing there in the an overview of like what is our raison d'etre, why are we even here? So those kinds of things I think are important. So really basically education of the staff. And then I think it's key to develop an onboarding program for new commission members. We had a huge amount of new commissioners this season, this year, and it's quite staggering what the commissioners don't know, and they really need to have. I'm going to institute some kind of a training session for them, so that when they come on, they get all the information that they need as far as their regulations that they need to look at, and then just how the meetings are run. Some of the members don't even know the first thing about running a board meeting, Robert's Rules of Order. They've never even done that. So I think that's really important to do. Data, so that's not much data there. I'm a little light on data today. Let's see. So other budget items. Increase all the application fees because of the cost of processing these things. I think we need to write grants. I don't know who's writing grants. I haven't been able to figure out when the last grant we got, except for the office grant. We know about that one, but we apparently have a number of grants, and it's very difficult to find out who wrote those, when. And that's partly because of the filing system. But I think one member of the staff needs to make it a habit, and I think they should produce about 4 grants a year. I think that would be reasonable, because they take about 3 months, but on a rolling basis, and so that at any given time I can say, well, I've got these 3 or 4 grants in the air, and we're trying to move these along. Then I think more money needs to be set aside eventually for open space. Brookfield is really quite light on open space. Newtown has done a much better job of that. They've got over 2,000 acres in preserve. So I would maybe in the next few years, I'd like to see some more money set aside for that. I would suggest that some way we would like to honor the commissioners, because they are volunteers and oftentimes don't feel that their efforts have been valued, and so perhaps considering a dinner or a ceremony to thank, as much as I hate ceremonies, they're terribly dull, but to thank the volunteers, little, give awards out or whatever, but just to thank the volunteers and let them know in some meaningful way, not little ways throughout the year necessarily, but just a meaningful way once a year to say we really do appreciate you. And a lot of the commissioners don't know each other, so it might be a good time to, to get to know each other and that kind of thing. And then I would say, and then we do have to begin the decennial plan of conservation and development. The last one was made in 2015. The state requires that. So we'll have to be thinking about that because the next budget season, budget year, we will have to either set aside money to do that. I mean, they can cost about 40, I think we spent about 40 grand on the last one. They can cost an awful lot of money. There's also the option of not hiring someone, but I think a lot of people get daunted at that because you actually have to do the work yourself. But I think there is a possibility that money can be saved, in that, but it does need to be done by someone somehow. So thinking outside the box, well, I'll tell you, having looked at these commissions now for just 2 months, the Planning Commission is very, very light now. We've got basically the Planning Commission, as you probably know, is tasked mainly with making subdivisions, with approving subdivisions. Most of the land in Brookfield has already been subdivided. There's not a whole lot to do. So there was a time when they were insanely busy. They still are running 2 meetings a month, which requires, of course, the minutes taker to be at the meeting and then to type up the minutes. So we're paying someone to do that when they actually have no business. I witnessed, 1 or 2 meetings where there was no business, but they met anyway, and that was for like a half an hour, and it's just wrong-headed. So my suggestion would be to combine, like most towns in the state, combine the Planning and Zoning Commission, particularly because as you saw, they only had 5 applications last year, and they were not subdivisions; they were just mere mergers, lot line, merging lots or lot line revisions. So that would be my recommendation there. I would also recommend that the position of the zoning and wetlands enforcement officers be combined. Presently, I'm the wetlands officer. And Fran Lally, as you know, is the Planning and Zoning Commission, the zoning enforcement officer. The job of officer is really a unique job. Someone who enforces the law. I love both wetlands and zoning. It's not that I don't want to be the wetlands officer, but it's a particular job, and it usually requires you to go outside, drive around, and visit sites. And it doesn't mix very well with wearing clothes like this. And reviewing legal documents, talking on the phone to various people, it's a completely different kind of job. So I would say, to make that office run smoother, the best thing to do would be to have the zoning and wetlands officer combined and have that person do that kind of work, which I mentioned: detect, inspect, and prevent violations, issue permits and compliance certificates, enforce the land use regulations. And then concomitantly, we would have to redefine the land use director position, which is my position, so that I mainly do the grunt work, the I don't know what you would call it, but the office work, reviewing, interpreting, administering, researching, and analyzing plans, policies, and regulations that impact land use, collaborate with public officials, civil and environmental engineers, architects, attorneys, and real estate developers. So I think that would be a much better fit, an organization of those 2 positions. So efficiency. So I mentioned the electronic file management system that would really help streamline things. And basically, what it wouldn't cost a whole lot. It would just cost time. So most of that can be done, I think, by people we already have on board. In certain cases, obviously, we would have to consult with professionals. Whether it's an attorney from time to time, or the WestCog is very helpful, and they are free. So there are organizations that can give a wealth of information, but you have to tap into them. You have to use them, and I think Greg does that very well. All these people are free with information, and they want to help. So. And that will be key for me in the year coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just to caveat, if you don't mind, Michelle, these are things that we're talking about. It wasn't that we just didn't give Fran the wetlands job when Michelle came on board. It was because she came with wetlands experience and Fran didn't have wetlands experience. So all of the things she's mentioned, we've had lengthy conversations about and we are addressing.
Right.
So it's kind of in-house type stuff that's not necessarily budget related.
Good.
My question is, it is sort of budget related. Let's go back to our slide, because now
Yeah, because we'll have to give me a big old fat raise,
I'm
right?
actually blown away here, and I'm sort of lost.
That's not
So
happening.
let's go back to the slides, because
Which one?
I want to go back to the document system
Yeah.
slide.
Document filing system?
Yeah, I want to go back to that slide. Well, right here. We'll go up one more. Let's go to here. One more up. One more back, I mean. All right, one said grants on it. Nope, down one. Institute, no, go,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's grant writing.
Yeah. But I wanted the one before that too, so I apologize.
Page 4.
All right, no, go back one more. Page 5. Whatever, that,
Alright,
no.
so it's going slower than me, so I'm on page 6, it's on, okay, page 7.
Slow down
so-
now. No, one more back.
Yeah, I
5.
did, it's gonna take a minute. My screen's on page 5.
Oh, it is already, wow.
There we go.
All right. One, well, how did we get here? Why isn't these things already done? I mean, why are we?
Because I wasn't working here.
Exactly.
I do know,
I'm at a real loss here, and it's not going
Me
to
too.
go to develop policies and procedures. Why don't we have them?
Well, I think, so, standard operating procedures, you know, it's, if Marcia were to slip and fall in a banana peel tonight, sorry, Marcia, you know.
You're already
been hit by a bus.
I know. Maybe Kevin could save the day, but, you know, I'm just using you as an example. Is there something that somebody can open and say,
Yep.
this is what she does on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? You know, no. I mean, maybe your department does have that, I don't know. But
We
Others
have,
don't.
we have a
It's
lot
crazy.
more in this. But what I'm saying is, this has been my gripe, and it's been a gripe for a long time, and I've told you right out the gate, why are we in these positions we're in? I can tell you why, and we won't go into it this meeting, but this should all be in place. This should be a function of every department. This shouldn't be, we need electronic document with policies and procedures. I mean, that's, I'm blown away. So go to the next one, because now I'm really at a loss here. Grant writing. I always hear about grant writing, we're not getting the grants, we can't get there. And yet, we try to increase hours in the finance department, talking to you. We're not getting to these grant writings, and we're not getting the grants. And we have 5 grants with FEMA we haven't gotten to. We need these hours to get to these documents. The annual dinner, no. And then let's go to the department, because we have so many volunteers. We gotta do it, we can't do it for one department. You got Board of Ed, Board of Finance, you got every commission. So I appreciate the thing, but, all right, next one, please.
and there is, you may not know this, the selectmen have something in their budget for an annual picnic.
Now,
I don't know
this
what that's like.
here is another slide. How do we get to where we are today in the land use department? I mean, if you've been here a month and a half and you've seen this, is your department right? Is your department, you have Fran, you have 2 aides. Are we utilizing these aides properly, or do we need to realign this whole department and say, hey, we have a director, hey, we have Fran Lally as the land use inspector, do we need another inspector?
No.
Or do we need to combine the aides and make it a full-time position and get a person in there with more skill sets? Is there?
All the positions in my department are full-time except for the registered nurse.
I thought there were some part-times.
Oh, there are a couple of floaters, but let's see, one's a, but no one working directly for land, for the four land use, commissions that I spoke of. So, my department's a little confusing because it apparently includes health and building and,
so
Fire.
and fire, right?
those were the sections that Steve Dunn peeled away from the first selectman to fall under land use. And when Alice departed, we kept that structure for now until we sort through it together. She's new, I'm new, and we address what needs to happen down there. Not to mention the fact that we still are exploring potentially going to the health district, which would take some of that away anyway.
a lot of times, a fresh set of eyes coming in on something, people inherit the position that they're in, and that happens, I'm sure, more municipalities than in the corporate world where we all come from. I mean, the document management system, I think only a few years ago, things switched over to an electronic process. It was paper before that, right? And, so if that wasn't set up from the beginning, I work in pharma, and we have a document management system that I spend half my day on, and so we have a very distinct guideline, a style guide about capitalizing your file names and the date formats that you have to use, and it's very helpful to just pull up this PDF document and go through and have it very structured and easy to find, easy to sort. So I think that's a very valuable practice for efficiencies and whatnot.
I just think these are basics to me. These are, this is where we grab our efficiencies. We redefine departments. It's what we talked about. This is, we're funding now, and we're still, it seems like we're not efficient and we're paying for being not efficient. You brought up a few items, like I say, the zoning commissions, if they're not doing any business, why are we paying that?
Well, we're
This
gonna
is-
address that in the charter.
Yeah, I was gonna
revision,
ask if that was
so-
charter driven, the number of meetings that they have.
Yeah, zoning's probably still pretty busy, but planning really isn't.
That's a fact.
And the cross-training seems to be something that would be really helpful, I'm sure, in all departments.
Yeah.
Because
And
Right.
if
we're
somebody says,
working
I
on
can't
that.
do this, but we're still paying you to sit there, that's a problem, right? There's priorities in the town, and they need to be addressed, by anybody that's available.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just a quick comment, an onboarding for, let's say, new zoning people, would be helpful. I was on zoning for 4 years right before you got here. And used to just, get the binder of regs thrown at you, and maybe an old timer would take you under the wing, and maybe they wouldn't, and maybe you just have to pay attention really hard, and hopefully you would learn quickly. So, something to bring people up to speed would be helpful, especially like you said, now there really are no old timers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did you, I have a question.
I'm here now.
Did you get your packet delivered to you when you were on?
We did, and, well, sometimes we did.
I
If
wasn't
it
gonna
was,
bring that up.
I have to ask, I'm sorry.
it was so helpful though.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the plans were very oversized. So if you're trying to look at them on your screen at home, a computer screen, you're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're
That thing.
huge, and there's a lot of information. Did the courier deliver it, or who?
Fran usually did when he was out and about doing things in town.
Okay. Thank you.
Rochelle,
Apropos
I have a serious issue with that, and so I'll speak to it, because, why should I pay $60 to have Fran Lawley deliver packets when I can have the Gal Friday
Courier.
deliver them, the courier, deliver them for $20 or $15, whatever it might be, including, the use of the town vehicle. That's what it costs about $60 to have, and Fran Lawley is supposed to be an officer, and he's supposed to be, somebody who's a higher level, employee, and here he is like running around delivering packets. Of course he doesn't mind, because he gets to go out where, out and drive around, and that's why too I think he should be, the officer, because then he can do what he does best and likes best, driving around looking at sites and issuing violations. So, I'm strongly opposed to, not necessarily to having the packets delivered, but I'm strongly opposed to having Fran Lawley deliver them. You can use first class mail. They'll get there in a day or two. They produce those packets a week before, I'm told. So they can easily be, delivered, by U.S. mail, and sure, they may cost $4 to send, but it's still cheaper than sending Fran Lawley out. So
You can't come get them?
Yeah, I was fine getting them.
So I instituted a program. The commissioners would, like all the other commissions, they'd come get them. And, there was some pushback from 3 members on the commission about that.
Our schedules could impact that, I imagine.
So we have an outside delivery, outside box, and it's available 24/7. Many people come to this area for the post office, what have you. It's not as if I'm not asking them to drive across the country. So. And then it turns out that many of the commissioners actually come into town hall to speak with Fran Lawley for for just to go over some of the information. So members are here anyway. So
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Great to meet you.
It was actually.
Absolutely great to meet you.
It's a
Very
pleasure.
happy about all
Thank you
this.
so
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, and good luck with the rest of this.
Thank you.
Godspeed, as they say.
Thank you.
Rochelle.
Greg, you okay?
Yeah, what happened? Ma'am,
You had elbows
just want to listen
yesterday.
in.
No,
Was that fighting for the budget?
No, this was a old accident. Long story.
Sorry to hear that. Feel
Everything's
better.
good.
Feel
Everything's good.
better.
See ya.
Feel better. All right, let's go through the other
She's
slides.
great.
Yeah,
I-
clearly.
I like her.
All right, so we've got a bunch of slides here in alphabetical order of the departments that didn't present. Do you want to go through
Yep,
each one?
absolutely. They put it together, we should go through them.
And the confusion there is that this is going several minutes, or a minute behind me. I'm already on the PowerPoint. There we go. So the assessors department, I cannot give them justice on what they did. The accomplishments: maintained 2 databases for the duration of the revaluation, conducted a revaluation during a global pandemic, implementing the new Vision 8 program simultaneously to conducting the revaluation, completing the 21 grand list duties simultaneously to conducting the revaluation. And what she doesn't say in there, with all new staff, that she had everyone in her office besides her was brand new. And completed the 21 grand list on time with an approximate 20% increase overall. Special items: her assistant assessor passed 2 of the assessor classes the last year. The Vision 8 program was included in the cost of reval, and 3 of their programs are now on the cloud, which, as I understand it, makes it less work and more secure, less servers.
And more expensive.
And more expensive.
Because we're paying other people to do the maintenance.
The key performance indicators, I should have read this in advance. Real estate coefficient of dispersion, which measures the uniformity, and the price-related differentials that, I'm sorry, I didn't ask her about these beforehand. And then the state programs, exemptions, and applications that there's a number of programs that we give our residents. Some are state funded, and primarily they're town funded, and you can see that in the calculation at the bottom. Here are the COD and the PRD percentages that there are the number of applications for each of the different programs. I will send you you've already got this one. Hardships, wages are not competitive for Fairfield County per the CAAO salary survey in neighboring towns for the assistant assessor position. The assessor clerks and assistant assessor are paid generally paid more than other clerical or supervisory staff because of the schooling involved and the difficulty of the classes. And she talks a little bit more about that. Affected these hardships: they have to keep going to classes, staff leave and new staff is hired, and time taken away from the assessor to perform assessor duties because they're always training and retraining staff. And we did have a new staff person that's starting her office this week. And then she gives some salary information.
Sorry.
Bethel salary information.
It's not coming up.
The slides
on
are,
this.
Oh,
there's a
sorry.
lag.
Newtown, next is Bethel. And then goals for next year: send her staff to the assessor school in June, continue the in-house and field training for the staff, and the Vision 8 training. They have a day and a half left for the training. The hardships are the cost of these classes and putting them in the budget each year, the assessor's time, and the program upgrade. Other budget items to address, we had said, talk about revenue and stuff. She has no revenue, that the only capital project is a revaluation. The only increases in her budget were increases in vendor cost. The personal property audits were cut back a few years ago to budget cuts, and then the pandemic, and they're still cut back. She wants to revisit the idea after the pandemic is over for good and businesses are back to normal, because that's a good deterrent. And she's asked for her overtime line to remain similar, which it did, because they're getting more calls regarding the reval, and more things to do following up on the reval. Thinking outside the box, that they can work from home because they're on the cloud. We need a better phone system. Too many calls are dropped, including one with Glenn, I believe, when she was talking to him. That efficiencies, cross-training staff between departments, improve workflow and response time, and there would be some training to do that. Replacing the phone system, which is on the list. Upgrade the computers as they're over 5 years old. That's the assessor.
This salary thing is gonna really get in my craw.
I think the position she's talking
Beth-
about is union, so you might
But
not want.
Bethel doesn't
This is
doesn't
a-
give any salary numbers, so to
This
throw
is a-
Bethel's number up there is
This is a
total.
union position.
I understand that, but Bethel doesn't produce salaries for anybody. We talk directly to the Board of Finance Director. It's not published anywhere, so to throw a Bethel number out at us is irrelevant to me, because that number can't be validated. You have to FOI it, I guess, to validate
Well, I
it.
would assume she called them.
But they don't produce it. I'd be honest with you, to get to the Police Chiefs Commission, I had to go through 15 people, all in the town hall, and all good friends of mine in serious positions, to find out what the police chief made. So these numbers aren't really given out by anybody. So again, this whole underpaid, and I think we're gonna look at data later, as well as who's producing this underpaid statements. I mean, where is this driving from?
That one,
We get an email today that we're 7% over, 5% over. We have the numbers from from a certain place. I've looked at numbers. There's an undercurrent in this building that's telling people that we're underpaid. And I think Dan is sort of right too. The market drives a lot of this, and we talked about it last night. It just keeps coming up, and I'm at getting to a point of what's driving this, because the data that I'm looking at, and I re-looked at it again, is we're not underpaid. What's driving this to these slides? Because when we look at the HR slide, it's going to say everybody's underpaid. Who's
I mean,
driving
maybe we should
this?
look at the HR slide before we
Yeah.
guess at what it says, but I don't want to talk about that because it's union, and I don't think it's appropriate to talk about union salaries.
But it was put up in the presentation to us to fund this, that we're not funding this properly.
So, like I said last night, we can open union contracts if that's something we're willing to do. I'd be happy
The
to go
assessor
down
is the
that
union
road.
contract? That's it.
It's a deputy assessor, or what's the title?
Assistant.
Assistant.
start.
And that position is underpaid. The two, I don't know what the other titles are, clerks who work below the assistant are
Right.
like $2 less an hour or something.
But then also you look at Bethel pays $232,000 for their assessor's office, so what's our total in our assessor's office compared to I mean, there's so many things in this that you could say underpaid. You could say the deputy assessor's underpaid, but we have 3 assistants in there and Bethel only has 1. So when you look at department
We're
overheads,
260 plus overtime.
so we're a lot more than Bethel. So Bethel's doing it with less people. So to say Bethel's deputy director makes more money, we're obviously doing it, they only have 232, I believe, is their number for their total budget.
So where are we getting the Bethel numbers if they're not out?
Right, I can get the whole town assessor's department is 243. That's it for the whole department, all inclusive. That is including salaries, supplies, anything that assessor's department needs, and this is right from their budget from last year, so we can add 3% even, or we're 235, so we keep hearing these numbers.
How much does their assistant assessor?
This is everybody in the assessor's department. Everybody in the assessor's department, salaries, supplies, everything is 243,668.
So,
That's
I mean,
dir-
I can't speak to Bethel, I can,
But we're allowing, this is where these things are getting driven from, and they're presented to us, and
So-
where is this undercurrent? Because I know where the
So
undercurrent
It came
is.
from last year, from what I understand, and they took, when the union contracts were being reevaluated, and they
Right.
took that position to be explored, and then other people came on board across town hall and said, and submitted their proposals for increases as well,
Right.
and then the former first selectman shot them all down. So the only way to adjust the union contracts at this juncture would be to open the files, which I talked about last night. So the union is one can of worms. And then we've got the non-union who can't speak for themselves. They have, at least in the union, they have the union representative who goes to bat for them. For the non-union employees, they have no voice to even, except for the department heads, to even fight for any kind of promotion.
Agreed, but I could fight for, I could throw a number up and say, Richfield pays 150 and nobody can verify it, and we're already jumping to pay 150. I'm at a loss for this. We'll go to the HR slide and then I'll preach to that, because that,
I don't think
Sort of.
anybody was fighting to go to 150 here,
no, but it
or
and then
100 for that matter.
if you're, no, I'll be quiet, because,
All right. And all of these are ones that you received in advance.
Yep.
yes,
Because we weren't
I
gonna-
read through, and that's why I know on one of these here that
Accomplishments: successfully hired and trained over 20 employees, retired and implemented pensions for over 15 employees from both our HR does both the Board of Ed and the town. The 1095s are now prepared in-house. Conversion from ESS to Kronos, maintained safety protocols through COVID. Special news items: no grievances filed against the town. Looking forward to a new normal relating to COVID. Standard key performance indicators in this industry for the department are all employees are trained and up to date for training with OSHA and state requirements, utilizing employee assistance program and YouTube for training to reduce overhead. With the exception of the library, retention rate was good, utilizing Aurora training.
Whoa, time out. With exception to the library, retention rate was good, and the last department just said we can't retain anybody, we need to pay somebody. So where is the disconnect? The last slide we just went through is we can't keep people, and we had to train people, we're paying to train people, and yet HR is telling us, other than the library, our retention is good.
Yeah, everybody's underpaid a little bit.
We'll get to that.
I think that was,
There's no thinking, the line clearly states with
well,
exception,
by the
retention rate
time
was
she
good.
did this slide, one person from the assessor's office left. The assessor's office only has 4 people.
That someone's not on the same page. This is-
That's the way I interpret that. I don't know what happened at the library or the last time somebody left. I have no idea.
Utilizing Aurora training for updates on laws and policies, utilizing the town website for most of our hiring, negotiated CSCA contracts successfully.
What are the policies we're talking about there? What do you think they relate to? Just HR policies, or what HR policies are in place? Because policies was something that came up in the land use. Do we know?
So, I'm sorry, why wasn't Fern here to brief this herself? I know some departments came and some departments didn't. How was that decision made?
It was those who wanted to present to us came, the ones that felt it was necessary to present to us. So, all right, that's good. Go ahead.
Hardships, I see a trend that employees are looking to other towns for more money. Background checks are increasing in price. Costs are increasing for employee retention.
Recognition.
Recognition, yes. Goals for next year: successfully move to the new normal relating to COVID, continue to train our employees and keep them safe, hire the best applicants we can for any openings we may have. Effect on the budget of these, we're not competitive on our salaries or hourly rates. Concerned we'll lose employees due to low salary and hourly rates. Other bite, well, no, apparently none. To think outside the box. What changes or improvements should we be considering? A salary survey. We are below the average salaries compared to other municipalities. Looking at the benefits of moving to a health district, updating rules and regulations. And we do have that in the budget, an extra $10,000 this year to get the non-union rules and regulations updated. Where could we find efficiencies with creative, unconventional thinking, partnering with other HRs in the area, hiring a service to do a salary survey? What would it take to start implementing these? Not in this budget year for salary survey, perhaps next year. Health district to get information now to determine whether to move forward. Move on to the building department.
It seems like-
She said that there was data attached. In the slides it mentioned.
That was, the slide with the data is,
She had like two of them where she said, I think it was the previous slide.
so that is, please attach the data, that,
That was on the
Oh, that was the
that
template
was on the
slide.
template.
Right.
Gotcha.
The next is the building department. Accomplishments, the school, that Brookfield Village 2, 14 Candlewood Lake Road, the Brookfield Grocery, Dairy Queen, Charles Schwab, and Kohl's and Sephora. Continued accomplishments, multi-million-dollar projects and other large projects valued at over $100,000 started in 2021-22 have created additional work. Maggie McFly's improvements, Shell, and 38 new home permits. The building department collected $593,000 in 21 in permit fees, and their budget was half that. Received 1,475 permit applications, issued 1,306 permits, and completed 2,807 inspections. Special news items, that several new multi-million-dollar projects, including the Enclave with a value of $14 million, 731 Federal Road with a value of $11 million, and 101 Lower Hill Road with a value of $30 million.
Sorry, can I ask what the bottom two projects are? Like, so I don't know where. Is Federal Road the ones that the new Linden,
Which number?
731 Federal Road?
Yes. Oh, no, that's
Linden's like
the
300 something.
food emporium, I believe.
Oh, okay. And then what's the Laurel Hill Road?
That's
What?
across the street from the cemetery where, behind the bowling alley essentially.
Yeah.
There's a couple of homes that are set to be demolished, and there's going to be a new apartment complex in there with over 100 units and a clubhouse. So there's 456 units between where the urgent care is and northbound before All-Star Batting Cage.
Key performance indicators for the building department: workload, efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, and customer service. Major hardships: not enough staff to help with the increased workloads, and there's no administrative staff to cover responsibilities when the admin is out of the office. Increased phone calls, sometimes more than 50 incoming calls in a day. Distractions from work, such as public not knowing how to use the online permitting system. Admins can't usually spend an hour helping someone. The public often expects hand-holding and won't even create an account and password unless we stay on the phone with them. Not being able to work from home on inclement weather days. Effect of these hardships on the budget. An understaffed department will not run efficiently, frustrations from the public, not being able to reach us on the phone or receive permits and COs in a timely fashion. Goals for next year for the department, retain a part-timer of at least 20 hours a week, that was his next priority for him. To succeed at meeting our KPI goals of efficiency, effectiveness, productivity, and customer service, which we've always had in the past. Receive additional training from Viewpoint Cloud OpenGov to upgrade our customer support plan and give additional training to staff so they can troubleshoot issues as they arise. Right now, we can only email them and wait at least a half day for them to respond when a phone call would be much quicker. Allow the admins to work from home during inclement weather. Effect of these hardships without proper staffing, our KPI goals will not be met. There will be poor turnaround time for the following: accepting and reviewing applications, completing plan reviews, issuing permits and certificates of occupancy, and requiring significantly more notice for inspections. Currently, we only require 1 or 2 days notice. This will also affect the customer service, as we can take in well over 50 calls a day and calls will not be returned in a timely manner. Lack of staffing in the building department will not support the First Selectman's goal of maintaining a prosperous, cooperative, and thriving community. Other budget items to address. The building department in the first 38 days collected $52,000 in revenue, accepted 97 permit applications, issued 76 permits, completed 186 inspections. Retain part-time help of at least 20 hours a week, increase the support level we receive from Viewpoint Cloud, see the 2019 and 20 analytical reports. Brainstorming session for thinking outside the box. What should we be considering? Retaining part-time help, at least 20 hours a week, offer overtime pay instead of comp time, allow admins to work from home on inclement weather when they would otherwise call out. Where could we find efficiencies with creative or unconventional thinking? A part-timer would help meet our goals of reviewing and processing permit applications and certificates of occupancy in an accurate and timely manner, as well as addressing the increase in phone calls. Increasing our KPI performances. If the building admin works from home on inclement weather days, she would not require a town laptop, as our online permitting is web-based and she can access the voicemails from home as well. What would it take to start these? $20,000. $20,800 for a part-time staff. Budget to support the additional support of our online permitting system. And that is building.
I have a question, and so mentioned the phone system, and I know that we've talked about it and it's been in the capital, but is the phone system, is it like a landline based, or is it something like they have like Microsoft Teams and can call?
Unfortunately, no, we don't have Microsoft Teams. The phones themselves, we did experiment for a while. There was a program that could theoretically be used with the system to get the phone number outside. We have had trouble with it being stable enough and working on their personal devices. Like the last slide said, they can call into the town phone system to retrieve voicemails, but that's not going to help them answer live phone calls from home.
Yep.
Marcia, just for my own identification, the land use building, is Rochelle the director of this department as well? So it seems like some of those things that were mentioned, we're not on the same page, because like they're asking for more people and working from home, and she's like, let's cross-train people, and that's immediately going to fix that problem, right?
So part of the problem, Ryan, is that we've got union people in the mix, and some of their responsibilities, I'm just learning this because I'm starting to explore all of the options, are not available for crossover.
Gotcha, okay.
So can we reevaluate positions and get departments correctly? We may not need a union person in these positions. We may need to identify a need. Then we can identify a job description. Then we can hire to a job description. Because this is chasing around. We can't fund 20,000 here, 40,000 here, 50,000 there. This one needs this. It's just not feasible. And we're going to go through salaries again, because I'm at a point with the salaries.
That's another concern is.
We can't fund anything until we get it right. It's almost like, why what point do we stop funding increases until we figure out where we stand? Because we're chasing so many things. Nobody's on the same page. Every department has different things. It's like everything that's been presented to us
That's right.
is helter-skelter. So how does we as a Board of Finance keep funding even pay raises? Because we could be pushing them farther out of whack. Again, we'll look like in the assessor's office. I did a study. We're the highest paid assessor's office in the area if you combine the assessor and the assistant assessor. So it's great to say, well, one employee is not paid enough, but when the other one's paid 20% more than the average of the other towns, we're bringing the bottoms up to the top.
That's
We
why
have
a
no
salary
plan.
study would make it fair and equitable.
We really don't have a plan.
And not to mention the fact that the non-union people could unionize. So that's
Well,
another
what we're
concern.
also in a vicious cycle too, and we've always been in a vicious cycle too, is the person sitting in your chair will say, we're gonna give the same raises as the union, and the union says, well, the town side got 2.5, so we gotta get 2.5. You can't even go into arbitration the way we handle our pay raises in town, because we chase each other's tail, and we never say, gee, the town side, non-union, we gotta be at 1.5 because it makes sense for the budget right now. It's a 1.5 across the board, because as long as we go to 2.5, the union says, well, the non-union people got 2.5, so now we go to arbitration in the union, and the way it's set up, I don't know if you're aware of how it's set up, if the union asks for 6% and the town says 0%, we go to arbitration. There's not a middle arbitration in this. It either goes to 6% or it goes to 0%. So it's a shell game you get into. But the arbitrator is going to side more on the side of what did the town get. So if the town got 2.5, a non-union employees got 2.5, 0 is unrealistic. So they're going to get the 6 because they can't award in the middle. I sat in on a lot of these negotiations. There is no middle ground. So unless we make a change in these budget line items, we can't get to where we need to go. And I just sent Marcia my numbers on the salary. And you can see, we're very consistent. And that's every slide that we've seen is non-consistent. Your departments are, not your departments, that you inherited them, I get that. Okay, let's be clear. But they're not on the same page. They're really not.
So right.
They're not.
One of the first things Marcia handed me was this document here, because on my first day in office, I was, well, before I even took office, someone said you need to consider giving this person a $20,000 raise.
Correct.
And I said, what's happening here? And the salary study was suggested.
Correct.
And having, we call them the one-offs, been approached by a couple folks to this point, 4 months in, it's not sitting well. Something is wrong. And I think the only way to get after it fairly and equitably is through the salary study.
But now, how do we get here? What department drives these raises? I mean, what department
So
drives a lot of this?
how it's been done in the past are what is called one-offs. From what I understand, someone from the library will come and say, well, this person,
Comes to who?
to the first selectman.
Who just does it on their own, or do they discuss it with another
From
department?
what I understand in the past, it has been done, these decisions have been made by the first selectman unless resources have had to be reallocated through appropriation.
So we bypassed the human resource department for,
I
4
can't speak
years
to
now?
that. I haven't been involved with a salary increase since I've been here.
because this is my frustrations that we've had, is every year we deal with this. It doesn't seem to get resolved. It seems to be an underlying issue that our employees feel they're underpaid. Someone is causing that turmoil. There's something happening that's causing this turmoil. It's bubbling up through every presentation. And are we really that thing? So let's go to salaries quick while we're doing. I just sent you an email. But I really, this is something, because we're keep funding 2.5%, and we keep
It's
chasing
2
each other.
1/4.
It was 2.5, I thought.
2.25.
Was it 2.25? I apologize. You sure?
That's what the
Okay.
numbers say.
I thought I did the math. So let's go to the assessor, because that was a great place to go to. Down.
I'm just gonna make it so the top show up here.
Oh, you're smarter than me.
I would just ask that we not look at the union.
Well, it's just there, it's not a union, this is just the pays that are out there.
All right.
So town clerk is also good. We'll stop at the town clerk. So the town clerk, Brookfield is paid, with the pay raise 81. New Milford is what, 74. Monroe is 74. Newtown is 87, but it's working 2.5 extra hours. Southbury is 83. Woodbury 77 or 79, and New Fairfield 77, and Danbury 70. So
Did she recently get a pay raise?
No.
Never?
No.
no, and it's not. I think she's doing a good job. So no, it's not. This is not job quality. This is not
He requested.
job. This is not any reflection on the person in the office. Let's be clear. Everyone's doing their jobs. I'm a firm believer of that. But there's no inequity on our side of Brookfield to be preaching that we're underpaid. That line item puts us right in the mix of things. So go down to the assessor.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, these are not apples to apples, Glenn, which is why, again, the professional should do it, just like we're hiring a consultant to buy the radio.
It's not apples to apples, but your departments are putting it up there that we are underpaid, they're putting this Board of Finance in a position of, we're not funding the town properly. We are grossly underpaid in departments. So what's the assessor that we pay our assessor? How much in Brookfield? 101. New Milford is 107. Monroe is 82. Newtown is 102. It works more hours. Southbury's 90 and Woodbury's 72.
I do know, I heard today with Southbury and Woodbury that they are not certified, or this was not certified. So that's where the salary study would be.
I agree, but I mean, we can't keep promoting this and putting the Board of Finance in these positions if we don't understand it. And where is that drive coming from? Who is giving the information to this Board of Selectmen and to these employees where this is popping up? Because I can tell you now, nobody's doing this research.
That is not true, Glenn. You don't know what people are looking at. We have gone to CCM. I personally have.
So what does
and have
CCM
looked at
show?
things
Marcia,
across
put up
the board.
CCM. What does the CCM data show us?
I mean, what is it that you're trying to get at here? Who's coming to me with,
What I'm trying to get
The
at
fact that
is,
they're
we
underpaid?
have a culture that's putting all of us in a situation, we're trying to pass a budget, and all we're getting in these presentations are, we're underpaid, we're underpaid, we're underpaid. We do have pressure from people to say we gotta get pays correctly. Why are we not paying people?
we also are, sifting through a culture of trying to retain good people with good skills who work hard for our town, where their salary should be commensurate with what's happening in the rest of the world.
Okay,
So
and we just
how
put a
do we
land use
do that?
director in at $2,000 more than the current director was, who came up with PowerPoint slides of how do we get efficiencies, where we stand.
Yeah, and I interviewed her and hired her because she was
Perfect.
fantastic,
And
and
it-
we got very, very lucky. She was the only applicant.
And we hired her within how much of Alice Dew leaving, this current one leaving? How
I
many
don't
days?
remember
A week?
the timeline. No.
2 weeks? All I'm saying is, I think it comes up every year in the budget process. And if we have people that think they're underpaid, we're not getting the efficiencies out of them either. If you come to work thinking you're underpaid the whole time you're coming, we need to get efficiencies. You know the numbers drive, it's a salary drive.
So, you're gonna laugh, but there's discrepancy on opinions of, are we underpaid, are we properly paid, are we potentially overpaid? Survey's gonna solve that, you're right. And exactly, I know. But so medium term, we're gonna do that. Long term, we're gonna have to take the results of the study and implement them. So what we're talking about today is short term.
Perfect.
What's the short
right.
term, are we going with this, or are we cutting?
So one of my questions too is, we have all the union positions are highlighted in green, and it said that wasn't finalized before the budget. Has that been final? Are these all really a 4.36% increase?
No, so that was last year, they weren't finalized before the budget. So when we tried to take the original budget,
Yes, right.
it's 2
That's
years worth of
2020.
increases in there. I wanted to tie out to the original budget. The other worksheets you have, I adjusted them to what they should have been last year after that increase.
Okay.
But the official
Oh, the actual
document
list,
is
25.
the official
Okay.
last year's
All right.
budget.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
thank
mean,
you.
I think one of the things that we.
I don't disagree with it, I think.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, next.
But I think one of the things that was hit upon last night too, I mean, if we do the salary study, the next step that can happen simultaneously is equalizing within the organization. Because, I mean, as you said, there are people that, there are certifications involved in certain people, but there are some people working 37 hours, some working 35 or whatever, and the pay differential in between there is something that internally we can evaluate. And that doesn't have to be an outside consultant, but I think that's probably something that should be looked at internally, just to kind of see where we're at and making sure that we're, on par amongst ourselves, and start there.
No, y'all are right. Y'all are right.
We're all right. You're not saying
No,
anything wrong.
y'all are right. I apologize.
No problem. Okay.
So this is development, the economic development, the accomplishments, new water main on Candlewood Lake Road, streetscape phase 3, streetscape phase 4, streetscape phase 5. The commercial grand list value increased more than 3 times higher than the residential, a year-end 21 and 19. The assumed affordable and incentive housing management responsibilities to the extent and an effort to extend the moratorium. Special news items hosted 7 grand openings, countless meetings with developers and business associations, and often requested to present economic development updates to the zoning, planning, and economic development commissions. A grant writer, that he wrote all the STEEP, the Connecticut DOT, DEEP, Department of Public Health, and DOH grant applications for the town. Led an effort to amend zoning regulations that will control implementation and require electric vehicle infrastructure investment for all new commercial and high-density housing developments. Member of Westcog's Technical Advisor Group, providing input and leadership to the regional strategies and plans. Key performance indicators, continued growth in the town's grand list, especially the town center district, capital projects completed at or below budget, complete action items on the economic development strategic plan, support land use commissions on the economic development on an as-needed basis, submission ahead of the 6/1/22 deadline of the town's first affordable housing plan. Affordable housing moratorium application is approved by the Department of Health. He's attached some of the strategic plan and the history, and you should have received that. Monthly reports of all activity is sent to the EDC, First Selectman, and Land Use Director on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. Major hardships, we don't have affordable housing plan policies and procedures, inadequate resources to meet incentive and affordable housing reporting requirements, no funding for future IIJA grant applications. There are numerous emails between the First Selectman's Office, Town Attorney, and the Department of Housing on the 2 issues listed above. This is how he supports that in the presentations. The effect of these hardships on the budget is non-compliance with the Department of Housing reporting requirements. The consequences are unknown. No affordable housing moratorium may result in excessive housing, putting additional strain on the town's fire, safety, and health, probably education. Lost infrastructure funding.
And some of this information is old. We now have some of this stuff,
All right. Goals for next year. It's getting smaller here. Complete the affordable housing plan, approve the moratorium, completes construction for 2 of the streetscape phases, work with the WPCA to overcome negative impact from the sewer moratorium, determine eligibility and write grants coming from federal infrastructure legislation, distribute the portion of ARPA funds that are identified as economic development, maintain sustainable Connecticut silver certification, take lead working with the zoning commission to adopt the 5G zoning regulation changes and to install the town's first electric vehicle charging stations either in a municipal parking lot or at the town center district. He included the data and the hardships are inadequate resources to meet the goals above. Other budget items, we have to update the plan of conservation and development. And we do have some money in the budget for that. I believe it's still in there. Grant solicitations are announced with little or no notice, and we must quickly hire an engineering firm and we kind of do that. And we talked once about an outside consulting fees. If we should put it in the budget, this was not the year to put it in the budget. Thinking outside the box, consolidate planning and zoning commissions, we heard that one already. Select charter revision team members who have the priority of simplifying town government and eliminating inefficiencies. Benchmark other small towns to see where more efficiencies can be gained. Consider regionalizing some municipal services. Consider changing the town's fiscal year. I don't even want to read this. We'll start on September 1st instead of July 1st. Where could we find efficiencies? Town charter, collective bargaining agreements, WestCog, HR policies, and that is development.
Do you want me to read some for you, Marcia?
Oh, come on. Oh, that's the attachment, sorry. You received that one already. Am I getting sloppy with my reading?
No, you're doing
We're up
great.
to S, so
You
now.
need some water?
It is a lot.
This is
It's
the
a
senior
lot. It's a
center.
lot.
We can all
Open to in-person programming in safe and consistent manner. Reopen congregate lunch and socialization programs safely. Online programming and grab-and-go events for those not yet comfortable in person. Grown membership as seniors recognize we are offering safe and consistent programming. Outreach programs to reach those seniors socially isolated during the past 2 years. News is a large mosaic renewal, including senior and wider community participation was designed, fabricated, and installed. That focused on mental health issues, a therapy dog, mindful coloring, working to develop a grief support group in the near future, and began accepting registration and payments online using credit cards for users' ease. Thank you. Standard key performance indicators, number of active members, newsletter signups. She's attached them. You
Thank
have
you.
those copies.
Thank you very much.
She uses the My Senior Center software to track membership. They're evaluating e-news readerships and monthly registrations. Hardships, their programs are staff-driven and staff-intensive. Appropriate salaries and benefits to retain excellent staff and instructors continues to be a priority. Financial considerations are important in decisions to offer additional free and low-cost events where seniors have a cost of living and inflation are impacting their disposable income. She's got the support there she limits the programs to what she can fit in her budget. Goals going back to a fully robust program. Evaluate feasibility on ongoing chores. Evaluate feasibility of durable goods closet to provide exchange of medical equipment and data to support these. She's done a response to the back and balances asking for those programs. They did a survey. 50% of the responses requested more online programming as well as in-person programming. 70% of seniors are taking exercise classes, that are requesting more classes, and the greatest need is the staffing to build capacity. The next priority form she had is funded through ARPA, that was approved, the 200,000, or so far has been approved.
So there's another priority appropriate salaries across the board.
And additional staffing for programs. Thinking outside the box, evening and weekend hours, a senior center cafe, a handyman program, bring in a communications position for newsletters, social media, websites, and that the Board of Ed brought that up as well, to maybe share a position. Additional senior center staffing for programs and expanded hours in the cafe. That's it.
What happened?
That was the same thing as above. That's what it would take to start to implement these programs.
So that was another department understaffed and underpaid.
Yep.
Brianna has been, sitting back listening to this, and she has, well, there's an underlying thing, every department understaffed and underpaid. There's a driving force somewhere, because we haven't heard this in years.
All I keep hearing, because I know there's a delay, is understaffed, underpaid, not enough resources to meet the requirements of, no policies and procedures. I mean, the previous one was, we don't have a policy and procedure, so we're losing out on grants. Well, that's a big issue. That jumped right out at me. So I guess I'm just, granted, this was my third budget season. The first budget season was COVID, and I got that everything was screwy with that. But this is just, where is this coming from?
Welcome
I'm
to
not saying
my
the
world.
salaries haven't ever been talked about, ever. I'm just saying this seems like a very common theme in my just, listening and observing. Yeah.
So pretty much, so we can summarize this and then we'll get off of it. There's not one employee that's happy in this group that isn't getting paid enough.
I think there's a difference between being happy and being compensated appropriately. I
But
don't
what's
know.
appropriate, we all think we're worth
I
more
don't
than
know
we
what
are.
that is.
Everybody does,
Right,
that's human
and
nature.
I think people got very accustomed to
But-
how wonderful it was to work from home, and oh boy, now we're back at it, and I can go to Amazon and get paid, I don't know.
Well, then, almost like, go ahead then. If you can't hold people ransom, I mean, it's like, go ahead then. It's to the point of, every department's presentation has been understaffed, underpaid, not enough resources. It's a common theme. And then when you do look at the other towns, and I get it, not apples to apples and this and that, I look at departments and the numbers, even in Newtown, the department totals are so far less than our department totals. Bethel, like I said, we brought it up, they included their supplies, salaries, everything in that office for less than what we'd have.
So I'm not convinced this is something new if a salary study has been contemplated in the past. Why was a salary study looked at in
This is the
previous
first time I've heard
years?
that. This budget season is the first time I recall this, hearing about a salary study.
We talked about it last year with Steve, absolutely, we
Why?
talked about it last year. Because these one-offs, Steve, it was never presented to us like this, but Steve came to us with weird pay raises, like 5,000 for this one, 10,000 for that one. Harry even turned it down in this thing. There was no basis behind them. And then I guess the common thing is, where is this all coming from? What is driving this? Because if it's a common theme, everybody's talking about it, and nobody's putting out a fire. Nobody's really, and it's coming to us as we look like we're not paying anybody any money. We're not resourcing our departments. If I was watching this at home, I'd be like, what the heck are these people doing? Every department is saying they don't have enough. We're not paying them. We're not resourcing them. We don't have enough staff. And it's disheartening, I guess, sitting here in this chair listen to this, and when you do the research and you look at these numbers, and Marcia had it too, she looked at these numbers aren't dictating what we're seeing. So where is this coming from, I guess, the root? Because the root is somewhere.
So I can't answer that, I don't know. But what I do know is Marcia and I have had conversations about some of these positions.
Okay.
And it is a fact that some of them probably are underpaid based on the things we've looked at individually and have had conversations about together.
I will just interject, I know I keep hearing Newtown, so I was Googling. The population of Newtown in 2020 was 27,000 residents, and in Brookfield it was 17,000. So even the population is greater in Newtown, Connecticut, and less than Brookfield, and you're saying Newtown is paying less than Brookfield? Did I hear that correctly?
In some areas,
'Cause there's
yes,
a bit
but
of a
Tara's
delay.
right, in some areas not.
Okay,
But that's where
Right, okay,
the
got it.
discrepancies come. But again,
right.
the discrepancies were out of hand, and we gotta pull it back somehow, because some of our directors are making a lot more money and the assistant directors aren't making enough. But when you bring the assistant director up to the average pay in the area, now our department's overpaid by 20% or 30%. We gotta at some point stop chasing it and managing it, I guess is the proper, otherwise we're gonna get out of hand. It's time to manage this
Yeah.
process, and there's a department that's in charge of managing this, I would assume. It's not a first selectman process, I would assume we have
Well, the
a,
precedent in the past was that it was, and now, I'm walking into this wanting to kind of change the culture, right, to your point before. So what do we do at this juncture collectively? It isn't a Tara Carr.
no.
Decision.
Well, it is a Tara Carr decision. It's not a Tara Carr issue, you didn't cause these issues. It is a Tara Carr decision, because you're now in that chair and all these departments are saying they're understaffed, underpaid, and we got hit with a lot of bombs, and I apologize for me being the way I am, because the $2.3 million fields, the police last night, all these things are coming down around us that we got to fund, and then to keep hearing we're underpaid, and I just don't understand that, and I don't understand how we got to, and I do understand this isn't a Tara Carr caused problem. Let's be clear.
I want to fix it.
Right. Yes.
So that's where I
Okay.
need your help. What is the best way to do that?
Perfect.
I don't know.
And that
I
was
think
enough
the
for me to
salary
hear. How's
study
that?
will help us get there.
I accept that from.
One thing I don't think the salary study will capture, and I think I saw that in the assessor situation, is, if Bethel has 4 or 2 employees, we have 4. You look at a salary study, we're gonna say we're underpaid, but we have 4 people in the department. So I think it also makes sense to look at comparison towns and see what our overall department, employment is, because, I'm not advocating getting rid of anyone. What I'm saying is, if we have 4 people, Bethel has 2, we might say we're underpaid, but these people aren't working as hard as people at Bethel are. You get what I'm saying? So I think there's, it's.
They may be though. I mean, if
They
like
might-
I say,
they
it's
might
not
be.
a person.
But they may be, and that's true. I think we have to quantify it, right? Why do we have more? And then we can look at that and quantify it. But I don't think you can.
It may be that Bethel has positions that they haven't been able to fill, so maybe
Could
their
be.
headcount isn't actually 2, it's more than that.
Could be.
Or they're not able to get all the things done that fall
Or maybe
under
town
the
center
department.
districts driving something. There's things, but I think
Yeah.
you have to quantify to ask those questions and quantify it.
My core fear
Would
why
it
was
be-
driving. Go ahead, Brianna. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brianna.
No, I'm sorry. Would it be appropriate first step to internally figure out, like I remember Marcia had said, there are some people in some departments, like the entry level is a salary, and the 3 steps up from that is hourly. And would it be fruitful to, as Marcia said, internally audit where we're at and get some and figure out how far off the marker we are, or how close to the marker we are first, and say, okay, these are the steps we've taken internally to figure it out, and then and then proceed, depending on what that data suggests, go further. Is it just like a step by step? I don't know. I'm just throwing something out. I don't know.
who sets the marker though? That becomes the problem. What is the threshold for who gets what?
I think to start would be just even compiling the data of who's, are all the entry level positions kind of on par with, if it's an hourly or salary or that type of thing, just even have that data in front of you without doing anything but looking at it. I mean, I think, we can't, decisions aren't gonna be made and things aren't gonna change until, like we said last night, that if we do a salary study, you're still gonna be sitting and digesting it and reviewing it for a while before anything happens. But I think there's still a lot of data gathering just to understand what all the employees are, how they're employed, really happening in the department.
I think Marcia's gonna help us out here.
So what I had given to Tara and Fern a few months ago when we started this and talking about internal equity and talking about just grouping, getting the data, as you say, that in this proposal they do talk about what they do as far as internally is we place the positions into 5 job categories to group positions that have similar levels of responsibility. So they have senior staff leadership, management supervisor, technical professional, the individual contributors. They describe each one of them here. Operational staff, and then support staff and administrative. It gives examples that if we use those examples, and think of a big spreadsheet, and these go down there's 5 rows, one for each, and then you start thinking about the other qualifiers that certifications or college degrees or what we're expecting of them going out in the middle of the night, something like that. And then you just start grouping the people into those and just see that, is there anything that stands out that, we look at administrative assistants, we look at the spread, we look at how that they're not all paid the same way, that would provide us an awful lot of information really easily. Maybe could be done in a few days, we could get some big disparities that we just recognize right there. That I would think that is an easy step that we could do internally.
I'm just scared about next year and the year after. Okay, that's where my angst is coming from, and it's going at you, and I apologize. It's not meant to go.
No, you don't have to apologize. Then I'm right there with you.
It's my angst of. I'll be really bluntly honest. We can talk about because we are talking about budgets. What the police said about accreditation last night, the Park and Rec number. We know EMS numbers are going up. I know Andy's shown us them 100 times, but they are going up. Whatever it is, they are going up. It's something we can't control. It's scaring me, all these things. And it also is scaring me that we have this underlying current. And I guess to me right now, we need all the current heading in our direction in these next few years. We all got to be on the same page. We got to have our departments on the same page. We got to have our Board of Ed on the same page, our Board of Selectmen on the same page. So this Board of Finance can support all of you. I mean, in the end, that's our goal. I mean, you guys are operating these things. You guys are the shareholders. And you can cut me off
Keep going.
if I'm crazy. We need to be able to support every department. We need to be able to support the education department. We need to support you and your needs in operating a town hall. We need to support the police, the EMS. And I'm just getting real scared on 2-3 years from now. We managed this year because we had planned, we had been very good about through the COVID years with Marcia's guidance on how to, adapt and put things away. We had some monies, to the positive that we can utilize this year. We're hopefully going to be able to carry some of them over into next year. I'm getting nervous, and I guess that's where my angst is coming from. And to hear every department say these things is, I guess my angst is turning into how do we be proactive in this? Like, are we looking at our departments? Do we have the right staffing? Do we have to change the staffing? I'm not saying people are doing bad, so let's be that way. I'm just saying, do we have the right people in these positions? What are other towns doing? I just think this is where we need to take it to be able to support everybody. Because at some point, we're going to get to a point where we're going to get to a budget number that the town's going to vote down. Not this year. I think we're really good this year. But we might get to a point next year And now all of a sudden, instead of us dictating the changes are gonna be dictated to us. You're gonna be told, the budget got voted down, we gotta lose 1%. Now all of a sudden, where do we go to lose 1%? And 1%'s $700,000. I mean, it's not a small amount of money. And I guess that's what's driving my angst. And I apologize that it's coming out that way, but I am getting nervous with the information that we learned in the past. I don't think I'm alone with the information that we learned.
No, I'm right with you.
And we know.
That was,
Oh, sorry, Brianna, go ahead.
So go ahead, Ryan. Brian.
And we know that we can only beat these small accounts up a little, ever so much. So if we need to cut 1%, that sounds like it's going to be salaries, right? I mean, if that's the case, and that's a tough decision. We don't want to be in that situation, right? And I agree with you. I'm on board with you 100%.
So I feel the same way you do, I feel like I've walked into this perfect storm of not only budget season, but we've got major issues in town. We have serious issues that need to be addressed. We're going through revow, we have charter revision year, we have coming out of a pandemic, we have, you name it, it's seemingly happening here in Brookfield with some major development coming down the pike. There's just, issues with facilities, our needs, and that's why when this was first brought to me, I said, I am going to tackle this line by line, be very stringent on, and scrutinize every single item, because back to my old mantra, we have to do more with the same. I never said more with less necessarily, but status quo, live within our means, all of these things that are going to sustain us so that we can do these things that the capital committee has been working on, and really try to solidify that 10-year plan. We should have a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan. 7 if you want, we need to be ready, these things that are pop-ups, like the rifles is a great example. This is the first time I'm hearing about that. Maybe that hasn't come up because John is new, and maybe Jay, I don't know what the history is on. I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
But these are things that we need to anticipate, obviously, and you guys know this better than I ever will, and build out and plan for. And how do we do that? I think when it comes to personnel and keeping our town afloat and fully functional with good, hard-working people who deserve to be compensated appropriately in today's day and age, there's a reason why the former first selectman got a raise, How are you going to attract talent to some of these positions?
Correct.
It's the same thing with everything across the board. If our tax collector ups and leaves, we might not have a tax collector for several months. It's just problem after problem after problem. So how do we collectively tackle these things? None of it's going to happen overnight. Processes and policies and procedures. I say again, I love that. It's going to take some time to get there. I'm just learning who people are, yet alone how they function and what it is they're capable of, and how we can come together to implement some of these ideas. So I'm just airing my own dirty laundry at this point.
I think you spoke great. I really do. Yes.
And I was literally just gonna say the piece about we need some long-term planning to get it right.
Okay. All right.
I know you're trying, you're used.
You guys, you can't say anything over there in the corner, so you just pipe down over there.
Write it down and give it to me.
Get a drink of water, Mary. All right, let's move forward.
I'll let you
Move
do
forward.
this. This is social services.
Oh, okay.
Can you see this? Maybe behind us?
Yeah. So social services, they've accomplished quite a few things since last year. They have run the food pantry consecutively or continuously through 2 years of the pandemic. They do great work out of the food pantry. I love all the volunteers in the food pantry. The Brookfield Recovers Fund has helped 50 residents with rent and home mortgage payments who struggled financially through COVID. And their goal was to keep residents safely housed during the pandemic. They assisted over 100 families and individuals with state and local energy programs to maintain heat and utilities. They assisted with identifying isolated seniors or disabled to get home care programs, Meals on Wheels, and other in-home services. They worked with other local service departments, Brookfield Police Department, and local agencies to develop case plan for several homeless and at-risk residents. They had a back-to-school and holiday program which served 59 families with 160 children, which allowed the children to start school with fresh supplies and clothing and experience a more joyful holiday season. Then they fully implemented the farmers market SNAP program through USDA. Amazing. Special news items. Home delivery of food using volunteers for the homebound seniors and disabled or impacted by COVID. They began home visits of some isolated and medically fragile residents in conjunction with our new public health nurse. They had a charity tracker which moved all files online. Ooh, we should see what they use there. To allow sustainability of information and easier tracking of statistics, moving towards maintaining a more paperless filing system.
Charity Tracker is actually the name of the program.
Oh, okay. Did it cost money?
Yes.
Then they don't
I
want
like the
it.
question though, good.
Changed food pantry protocols for seniors during pandemic and with high grocery costs due to inflation. Their KPIs, assistance provided, food pantry clients served, homeless at-risk clients, and the number of residents reached through collaborative partners being United Way, Salvation Army, Choices, etc. And then they have a history of their KPIs attached through data in a graph. And they also have attached their plan to track each of the monthly, annual revenues, or what is that? KPIs.
Yep.
Some major hardships, the increase in the number of clients with mental health issues, with compounding financial issues, requiring extensive case management and time, which can overtax department resources. There's also data attached to support the need for these changes. And then the effect of these hardships on the budget are staffing needs and the need for staff to provide one-on-one case management and outreach. They have goals for next year to work with the police, fire, EMS, and public health to continue coordinating services effectively, to evaluate feasibility of an ongoing chores program to help seniors disabled with small, low-cost jobs around their homes. They would include safety concerns and other issues such as standing on a ladder to change a light bulb, and it would assist those seniors with the stated goal of staying in their own homes. Also, a goal of a food pantry newsletter rather than relying on social media to help get the word out. I'm sorry?
Splitting it, the senior service there, they want to spread it out, have it separate.
Oh, they want to separate the food pantry newsletter from their senior center newsletter. And they want to evaluate the feasibility of a durable goods closet to provide exchange of medical equipment. It would require a location, volunteers, and advertising this service. They also have data attached to support the need for changes to address these items, and the effect of the hardship would be, as stated numerous elsewhere, our greatest resource need is for staffing to build capacity for expanded programming. Other budget items. Consider stated in their next priority form, they have a funding request for ARPA Fund Committee creation of a behavioral health, which we've approved.
That was the ARPA,
Oh,
right?
but
That was
outside
the
of the box.
$200,000. That's for 2 years, right?
Yes.
So we have 100,000 for each year.
Depending on what we can get for that money.
Right, okay, but I mean, that was the goal, the
That was
original
the
thought
language
process.
of the proposal, yeah.
Okay.
So outside of the box, they would like to potentially integrate and coordinate services across town lines to encompass outreach, case management, and mobilization of mental health services. Working groups of public health, social, and senior services, police to collaborate regarding difficult situations, which we already do. We could find efficiencies with creative or unconventional thinking. Self-serve social service for higher functioning clients, allowing more time to offer supportive services for those who need them. And then, of course, office space, computers, printers for clients to use. Considered a resource center, which they actually asked for through a proposal for ARPA.
Her writing was too small for me to read, so I'll go here to tax collector. All right, tax department, they completed tax sales in October of 2021. They started with 33 properties, had 11 by the time the tax sale, so 22 paid off. 6 were sold, and the redemption period will end April 22nd. You have 6 months to redeem it, and a number of them have been redeemed.
So what happens when these properties are sold?
So if I don't pay my taxes, you buy my house, then I have 6 months to come up with the money. I pay the town my taxes, and then the town pays you back with interest.
So, but if we sell them, 6 properties are sold, do we get the net for our taxes, or what do we get out of that? How does that all work? Or we get all the sales money?
We get all the sales money that I believe. Let me look on that. That because I think that I have to check.
I just am curious if they owed $30,000 on the house and the house sold for $50,000, do we get $50,000, or if it's a house sold for $300,000, do we get $300,000?
For the most part, we haven't been getting the money, but I haven't looked at if it's the total or just the taxes, because we end up paying it back with interest.
Right, I remember you saying that, but this here says 6 properties were sold. So somewhere there's 6 properties that had a revenue versus a tax.
So right now, those 6 properties that have a liability that so let's say you bought my house for $100,000. We have a liability on our books until April 22nd for $100,000 that we haven't put it into revenue yet. And then when I pay it back, pay my taxes, you get the money back. And rarely do we end up with the property. That usually it gets paid back.
Right, but that's what I'm still trying to say is, what does the 6 properties mean to us? What is?
So 6 properties that have to.
They were sold, 11 properties in tax sales, 6 properties were sold.
So it says sold, but they were temporarily sold. They have 6 months to.
Okay, I apologize now,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
So you're saying is, someone put in a bid, the bid is out there, now it's up 6 months, now the property owner has 6 months to pay us in taxes
Yes,
back.
so if you bought that house in October, you don't know if it's really gonna be yours until April 23rd. Because you have 6 months to,
And history says everybody pays, for the
I
most part.
believe everyone pays for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
She's continuing to strive for collections in the 99% range. And they've started the requirements for recertification of courses to maintain their certifications. Special news item is that she is a certified Connecticut municipal official that through CCM. That's a process that they have. Key performance indicators, current year tax collections, percent of levy, current year tax collections by month. You look at those every month. The hardships, education for ongoing training is now required to maintain their certifications. It was reduced due to COVID as training was not readily available. And now training is essential to meet the required credits for certifications. A change in the motor vehicle registrations from 2 years to 3 years could slow down some collections because they can't re-register until they pay. They're going to goals. They're going to start working with the marshal again to increase the personal property collections. They're going to start planning for the next tax sale and continue to use tax serve for motor vehicle collections. Other items that their tax program has moved to the cloud, increased flexibility but costs more. The new Chrono system has placed a strain on the overtime line. I'll have to look at these things before I send them out.
It's the first run. It's the first time the departments have done this, so it's all.
The increase in our overall budget is necessary due to the economic conditions that it's just, the biggest thing is the programs increasing their costs. We did work with her to decrease the sporadic wages. And then we cut her travel anyway, her conferences anyway, but she thinks with COVID, more people are paying online, so she reconsidered the sporadic wages, and instead of having someone in January and June part-time, she's gonna do January internally. It may take a little more overtime, but it should save $2,000. They're still working to find taxpayers that left using the LexisNexis system, and if we wanted to, we could move more collections earlier to collect them faster, but also reduce our interest. That is a tax collector.
Now,
Oh
can we utilize, like we utilized in the past, we utilized the marshal to collect back taxes? Can we utilize that same process? Do we feel like we're tracking all of these new cars coming into town or anything else? You're shaking your head no. Are we tracking? Are we not tracking? Or can
So
we?
we're working on that, Roberta. Also, there's a program that you can pay for to help us with that, but
I know the marshal got us a lot of back tax money.
And
That
she's-
process worked.
And she says she's gonna start using, she stopped during COVID, but she's gonna start that again. And we don't pay the cost of that, the marshal fees are on top of the taxes.
Correct. I'm just wondering if that would be another way to get revenue that's due to us, not increase revenue, but to capture some of these. It's just a thought. It's out of the box.
But
Put
yeah.
to the out of the box point.
She did say she's gonna start that again.
Yeah. Okay.
And regarding the cars, I mean, she has been working on it. It's not that she's.
Then that's
That was
fine.
something
Yeah.
that
That's
started
fine.
a couple years ago, I think.
Yeah, as long as it's.
But it's a really valid question because we've got this influx of new license plates.
It would be
and-
nice to grab whatever we can that's due to us. I'm not
Something-
saying go out of it, but due to us.
Go to the center
Make
school,
rid-
go to the center school line and see all the New York plates there.
There's a lot of grandparents helping out though. You can.
You
got
Yeah,
more?
yeah, let's not get, I just, as long as you have it
I heard you,
under
but-
control and we can move. But I think if we need to support that, like the marshal really paid dividends for us. If there's a program that has that same value, like, because Marshall, it brought in quite a bit, Marshall. You were impressed, actually, I think,
Mhm.
of what the marshal got us. If there's a program, we can utilize that for the cars in the same mode, not tax our resources, utilize outside resources at a non-cost. I think that would be a good way to go.
I want to be fair to the assessor, that she's like a bulldog, that,
I'm not.
so I just
even-
want to make sure
yeah.
that we
We're
all know
not
that.
questioning that. It's to maybe a service to get away from adding extra resources or overtime that'll take it off her plate. Because you said the marshal's at no cost.
For the tax collections, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, the town clerk, that they dropped a 20-hour staff person during the year, that, and job performance increased, that increased map availability with historic document preservation funds, increased the land record availability through the online system with the historic document preservation funds. It's an outside grant in the grant fund. And the town clerk is received her certification. She's completed multi-year board and commission minute projects that I'll say when I went in there, when I got here, I'd never seen a town clerk's office that didn't have books, so we had none of them. And you look at the walls now, and it's just full of books. That successfully and safely administered an unprecedented volume of absentee ballots for a municipal election. The performance indicator or land record recordings and dog licenses. She did attach some that you were forwarded. Hardships, vault improvements will be necessary within the next 10 years. The newer staff with intentions to become certified. They have approximately 8 to 10 years of space available for land records. Increased absentee balloting requires increased storage space and mandated retention periods. 10 years for the vault again, and more money in education. Goals are continued proper preservation of historic documents, for land records, vital statistics, and trade name registrations. Continue to provide more remote access. Talking more about that as the way the pandemic has changed that. Making digital images reduces wear and tears on the originals. And most of these have little to no effect as they're paid for with grants. Other budget items to address, computer monitors. Larger monitors will result in better view of the documents, less strain for employees, and increased accuracy. Additional labels and receipt printers will enable employees to work at their desk. Thinking outside the box, that improved technology, training for employees provided by the town, cross-training employees between departments, and implementing standardized training across town departments.
I like it.
I did too.
I thought that was excellent. Sheet. Yeah.
And that was it. Oh, we're done already?
We're done already. Yes. All right. Okay, so let's go back to the scorecard, please. We'll start with Mary tonight. What have you heard from the departments that you had concerns of that we may need to put some back in, take some away, that we have not addressed, or you want to readdress?
Yeah, I think the biggest things that we hadn't addressed already are things a little more for the future. So those bigger ticket items we started hearing, like, you know, the track and things like that, but that's not for this year. This year, I think we're pretty on target.
Okay. Eileen?
I think my only outstanding question is probably the snow plow thing for Kenwood and how we want to address, for the Kenwood Lake Elementary School and how we want to address that. Is that something that we, I don't know. I mean, like, it almost seems like we need more information to get bid. I mean, if we go with the potential to rent it for another year, if we feel like we need to, but if they could outsource that job to another company that doesn't cost $15,000, seems like a possible way to go.
Okay. Tara, when you talked to them about this, because you took it out, right, of the budget, wasn't that one of your removals? Or whose removal?
She added it in.
She put it in?
It was,
Okay,
took
I
it out of
apologize.
capital, the buying the piece of equipment and
Okay.
putting the rental in.
We rearranged the situation
So
to
you have
accommodate
it
next
covered right
winter.
now in your budget,
it is?
the 15,000 is in your budget now?
That's what came proposed.
Okay,
Yeah, we
okay.
cut it out of capital because they wanted to buy the machine plus.
Yeah, so it's in for this.
Yeah, and
Go ahead,
what
Marcia,
she's
I'm sorry.
talking about is that the 15 was added and then the separate 15 was subtracted from her budget. So you can't tell the difference. And so Mary's worried about the 15 that was subtracted from her budget.
I'm more confused now than I was, so I
I was having a hard
apologize.
time following.
So here it is,
It-
the 50.
Right,
15,200 was added because she said if it was cut in capital, it would need to be added. This extra mowing, she got included into the contract.
So that's a non-issue.
So that was a non-issue, but this is the 15 that she's worried about is
the inflation 15 that we talked about.
inflation and additional work that she was going to do.
But it says then reduced to actual
So
history.
that was just a little note for me of why was it done, that you can't look across and see that, oh, look it's flat across the history, it's still up, and so we had to add money in there because of the contractual increases. And so we looked at it and let's say that was, we had to add $8,000 because of the contractual increases. So it's flat across plus $8,000. So that's what that means. That's the line that she's concerned about.
Do you understand that? I mean, I'm sort of confused. I just can't follow this right now. I'm sorry.
I just don't think, I mean, if we're gonna address inflation concerns, we address it at the total budget level, not at the department level.
So we're gonna follow suit with the Board of Selectmen's 15,000 removal and address it if it comes up.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that okay, you, Mary, Eileen? Does
Yeah, I
that
think there's
solve
enough
your?
unknown in there, that as long as we're willing to address it when it comes up.
Brianna?
Yeah, I think, as Brian said, you have to address it at a budget level versus a department level, and I think that we just, you know, like we did back with COVID, you know, maybe we just do that iterative, which I can't say, budget process. You know, maybe we look at the numbers monthly and we make sure that there's inflation happening on fuel charges, transportation, and just kind of just see and watch it. And if we need to address it, we address it.
Okay, so then we'll leave it like in the selectmen's hands, or selectmen's, like she has it. She made the decision, and I think that's solid, right? So we can address it when it comes up. So any other concerns you had? Did you have any concerns about the library still before we get away from
I thought
that?
we put the money
Yeah, we
back
put
in.
the 11,000, whatever.
All right,
Yeah, we put it back in, so I'm okay with that.
all right. Ryan?
We talked about, the finance department bringing, the assistant to 40 hours,
37.5.
37.5, excuse me. And we said we'd support it, but only if Tara was on board, so I wanted to see where she was, so I think we should probably, if she's not on board, I wouldn't support, I think we need to, you know, she's running the town, and I think that we need to support what she, has with her staff, so I think that I would argue to cut that.
I support a salary study.
Yep. And that's half, it's a quarter of the way to a salary study, so a little bit more than a quarter of the way.
Is it in there?
I just took it out. It
No, but
was-
that's in the study.
Oh, salary study,
No.
it would have to be added back in.
Was there a presentation from Public Works?
I do have the presentation.
I don't know if they were making any.
Let me go through.
Yeah, we should probably go through.
Yeah, I guess we'll come through those.
Oh, this one, I'm more worried about.
Oh, 17 slides, wait, what?
They didn't follow our format, we don't have to go through it.
You didn't know.
We'll go through it.
I mean, they might be pictures. Ooh, it's big.
That is their mission. Then
I
there's
know.
two departments.
I guess their pictures, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, pictures make it exciting. That 14 individuals with various specialties. They're the actual first responders in an emergency. They do the town right-of-ways, storm responses, install drainage, fleet maintenance, tree maintenance, street signs, or road striping maintenance. That the facilities department handles all the facilities in town other than the schools. That the accomplishments, they continue to respond to severe storms. It was Henry and Ida. 7,500 cubic yards of debris was collected and delivered to the brush yard, and it will be processed and hauled to the final destination in the spring. The accomplishments for the highway, they responded to all the winter storms, which were on nights and weekends, as we see by their overtime. They replaced thousands of feet of drainage pipe and hundreds of drainage structures to support the paving program. 15 miles of roadway were either paved or preserved using different techniques. The cost is $17,000 per road mile. Crack sealed 14 miles of roadway, replaced several hundred feet of damaged guardrails in different locations, made repairs to the west West Wisconsin Small Bridge damaged by Storm Ida. Budget accomplishments, they maintain a fleet of over 100 plated vehicles. The antiquated vehicles replaced or are on order, waiting for the supply chain. And they give a list of what those vehicles are. As far as the MS4 program, that's a stormwater drainage program. They swept all the streets, inspected all our catch basins and cleared them when necessary, conducted illicit discharge investigations when necessary. Well, that'd be fun. In 2020, they created a partnership with HBA to conduct pollution monitoring testing of the stormwater discharge locations, and continued the digital mapping efforts, partnering with WestCog. More accomplishments, that they reevaluated and adjusted snow and ice control methodology so that there's less salt, replaced 4 long-term drivers with new town employees. Hundreds of residents generated work orders that they followed up on for tree damage, potholes, drainage issue, dead animals, and beaver dams. Facilities, they have a contract in place for the library windows and front door. That they've replaced several of the HVAC units in Town Hall. They demolished and disposed of 2 waste oil facilities that contained PCBs, installed new sidewalks and ramp out front at the Town Hall, replaced antiquated tiles at the senior center, and they're working with different departments to generate a comprehensive security plan. Other things that providing engineering solutions for public safety, maintaining stormwater drainage systems in the MS4 program, manage the capital improvements for town hall facilities, the paving program, provide assistance to the other departments, provide refuse and recycling services, and respond to citizens. Raising prices is going to have an impact on our gas, diesel, fuel, propane, and asphalt prices. Metal costs are going, metals and lumber costs are going up. It'll be hard to get things if the supply chain is still a problem. Weather is also supposed to impact in the future, that has in the recent past. That puts a strain on their workforce, equipment, overtime budget, and the fleet is aging. The goals for the budget year is a successful pavement management program, the MS4 accomplishments, maintain the vehicles and the fleet, respond to winter storms, replace the windows, replace the circulating pump, inspect the trees, maintain and operate the brush yard, consider additional recycling opportunities, and continue to respond to the COVID crisis as needed. What that might entail is new cleaning procedures and guidelines, deep cleaned using hydrogen peroxide mist early on. They hired an additional part-time cleaning person to help at Town Hall, Senior Center, and Library, increase the number of hand sanitizing stations, increase the cleaning supplies, made changes to the filtering system, installed permanent glass desk shields, created and distributed signage for the facilities, and worked to help store and distribute the PPE. He's the point of contact, Ralph is the point of contact for WestCog and Malone and McBroom to update the hazardous mitigation plan, and that will allow us to apply for and receive federal funds. And that's how they funded $2 million flood relief at Meadowbrook Manor. And I will send you do not have a copy of this, I will send you this. And there's some of the pictures of what they've worked on and what they've accomplished. And that's it.
You know how many miles of Brookfield roads are in town?
100.
Nice round number.
They actually have a really cool program on how they do this. It'll blow you away to go spend some time. They have calculations and different ways they approach different roads. They pave some roads, they skim some roads. They have it is remarkable, and Dan was blown away too when we questioned this 4 years ago, and we were like, holy cow, this
They
is
have
a
a plan in place for succession.
yeah, they really have a great plan in place. They're really on top of it. And besides, our roads are always the best in the winter. In the whole area, you know when you're on our roads. So it's amazing, I think, what they do. Again, when you hit Brookfield, you know you're in Brookfield. You know what I mean?
Unless it's a state road.
Yeah, you
need
have
to
to remind
remind
people,
us,
yeah, you have to remind people, Federal Road's a state road.
Yeah.
That pothole is not ours.
Exactly.
But they
Junction Road.
really have an extensive, we give them, what I think is 1.5 million for the roads, but they really have an extensive programming and thought process behind that. And that's a solid number. That big number is a solid number. You've seen it, Harry. I
And
mean,
that,
you've
and
been
that's
involved.
Ralph
Yeah.
Yep.
spearheading that.
Right, but they really have calculations behind it. This isn't just something that's thrown out there. They really do put a science to the road. So, all right, we went through them all now. So, Ryan, anything you took out one? Is there anything else?
Well, I just want to go
Did
back to the
we
highway.
want to put the 20,000 back in? I put that in, but
Yeah,
I think you have to.
In the highway department, I mean, I'm assuming that Ralph's not here. He's okay with the 45,000 that the selectmen cut. So I mean, I'm good
Okay.
on that.
He would be here if he didn't.
Yeah, I
he
think
had a
that,
problem.
I think
Absolutely.
that's right. So, that I think the only other point we're going to make is just quantifying contingency for the inflation. I think we just, I would hate to throw a number and that number be too light or too high for the taxpayers. I think we need to be able to support that number. This is and just come up with a policy or a model of, okay, we think $3 million could be affected. We look at 7% inflation, we take half of that. So you just kind of figure out, we can support, and if somebody asks, this is the reason we came up with that number. Because I think it's, you can get away with, you can get away from yourself with contingencies. You can just put a contingency on everything. I think it comes to have a point where there's logic behind why we took that contingency. Yeah, we are facing inflationary time, but I think there needs to be some thought process into why we selected numbers.
Are municipalities subject to gas tax?
No.
No, so we wouldn't get the break on that 23 cents that
that's
you're
right.
looking at that Lamont's putting forth. I agree, everything you're saying. Our problem lies in with the whole process is, and Dan brought it up last night, is we carry the special ed in our side on the contingency side. So 2 students is 240,000 right out the gate. Then we're stuck with, we don't have it.
That's
So
the
I
thing.
actually
Well, I
agree with
mean,
your process though.
Yeah, I
of
think
looking
when
at
I'm
it
talking
and
about
paring
the
it down.
contingency. No, I'm not even talking about paring it down. I think we talked about adding a contingency, inflationary contingency
Correct,
number.
yes.
So that's where I think we need to be able to quantify why, where do we get to that number? I would hate to just throw out an arbitrary number, 50,000.
No, I agreed.
I think
Agreed.
that, and I think we keep, like you said, if it's special ed, I mean, we just saw Bob's email, I don't know if you saw it, it seems like, they're starting to get a little tight on special ed, maybe we need to, consider, special ed might be a problem, in the coming years, so.
Dan, you're listening, so go
Yeah.
ahead, let
No.
the wheels turn.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's come back tomorrow and finalize the contingency number. I don't have any changes to what we've added or subtracted. I mapped it all out, I'm happy, but I do want to take a couple minutes, Marcia, and really understand the adjustments you made from your ARPA and bond premium and how they flow through the line items of the budget.
I do have one alibi on Ralph's, if you don't mind, regarding the HRA. I think you added 8,000 back in.
Yeah, for the.
He
yeah.
did ask me to make sure it was figured to 15,000. I think was the number. Let me find my paperwork. I think it was an additional 2,000 something that needed to be added. We can talk about that later, I'm sorry, I just remembered that.
You can bring that number tomorrow, don't
Yeah.
get stressed, if it needs to be added, we add it tomorrow.
It's 2,300 that needs to go back.
Into what line?
For the HRRA, the recycle and,
The hazardous waste,
so for the program that,
We added in,
Yeah,
the,
added hazardous back in.
yeah, we added 8,000 for hazardous back
I took out the 8.
we put it all
Yes.
back in, so if Ralph's part of that number, he's already whole. If he's not part of that number, we need to make him whole.
I took out the 8, I think you guys put the 8
We
back
did, we put
in.
it back in, yes.
And he's saying he needs an additional 2,300.
On top of that,
Yeah,
okay, alright. Then,
because it's projected to be 15K, so is that 15K?
Well, it's 23, but,
in. And that was it between 23.
Maybe he was meaning
just
he only
circle
needed
back on that
2,300.
number.
No, I spent 15,000 in the past.
What line is that, Marcia? I'm sorry.
that is
Right, but
hazardous
if you
waste.
add the 2,300 to that, I think he's saying he only needs 2,300, that gets you to 15K.
Oh.
That's what he's saying.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so-
the math,
so
yes.
Oh, gotcha. So instead of 8,000,
Yeah.
it's just 2,300.
No, because that now Mary's only point that she actually fought for, the book back in besides education, we took out, and so we still need, what is the hazardous waste day
Cost.
cost us?
$15,000.
For
Well,
the day?
no, for the
The
3
eight.
days, we have one day that we host that can cost $5,000 to $6,000.
Yeah.
Then we participate in 2 other days where we spend about $2,000 at each event, and we have 2 employees that we provide at each event as well. And it's also based on the percentage of people who attend from Brookfield.
So that 12,700 needs another 2,300 to become 15,000.
Which would be similar to what we've paid in the past.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it's 8 then?
Yeah, what was
So
the
the eight-
20,000 originally?
The 8 was what was cut, but he's saying just add 2,300 back.
Okay, so we did need 20,000.
Okay. I believe Ralph.
Yeah.
I really,
Alright, that's good.
All right, so then we are going, all right, so with respect to the one-time revenues,
Yes.
that, here were the premiums, that, this is the total amount we had between the 2 years. This is the one that's in the budget this year. We talked about not using the whole premium and carrying it forward. And the number we were looking at when we did the budget to actual for this year was 900,000. So we don't use 900,000 of the 21 premium, and we use it next year because it's first in, first out. That then we don't use 550 of this premium and use that the next year. That ARPA that we've taken, so the red is what's changed from the beginning. That ARPA was 1.9, instead of using any of it this year, we use some of it next year and some of it the year after. We have to use it by December 31st, 2024. That the available fund balance and capital non-recurring, no timeline on that, so that would be used next. And then the available fund balance in the general fund, that's the amount with the policy that we have, that we've got it segregated for half of last year's surplus. We would use that over these 2 years. And then we still would have to be creating more of a surplus going forward, 850,000 that we create over 6 different years to offset some of these, so that all of the increases just on this, example, are at about a 3.5% rate, and we're just trying to keep them even
Right.
over time.
So,
that's really not far off from what we talked about for
No,
last
but
year,
right, I
mean,
agree.
it's just a reshuffle
yeah,
this year, but this is something we've talked about
Right.
for 3 or open a year now, I think.
right, so I wanted, so going back to the budget worksheet on the revenues page, we're gonna have to toggle back and forth. I see that on line 88, interfund transfers, that's the ARPA money is gone. The 225 is gone.
Yeah,
Replaced with row 92, use of bond premium, an additional 350.
yep, so that the total that we're using is 1.8 million, 977, that's the total
That's
of,
the 900 minus the 550.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, there's the, where it ties out.
okay. And there were no changes, we're not, and then did we move stuff from cash capital to ARPA capital based upon, on this as well for the 225?
We did, we moved about 252,000, and I just did these in orange because I wanted this number to tie out to what we had in the budget, but it was 252, so if we go to capital,
Yep, there it is, I got it.
over here, that,
It's in orange again, isn't it? I thought.
that we just added it as a new category, year-end 2022 contingency. It just rounded to 252,156. And then we just put them in the order of, I put them in the order of where I thought the approvals would need to be. And we have a call with the attorneys tomorrow afternoon to double check what I had thought of, the approvals that need to be done.
Okay. Okay.
So where are we at right now? 3.27? I don't know. Well, I have no idea, I'm just, my computer's off.
3.27.
Okay. I don't have a hardship with this number. I think that we're gonna have to do the same thing next year with the creativity, using surpluses and get through, because debt is driving how much of this? What's the dollar amount of debt services that we're driving this with?
Can you go back to the slide that shows the percent increase over the years?
$437,000.
The spreadsheet, the one you were just on, I think. We didn't look at that.
How much is it driving the extra?
437
The
increase.
one,
Yeah.
the
Increase
were
with all
just
the things
on.
we moved around, right? So it's a half a percent
Expenses,
driving
revenue.
it, so really you're talking
No,
about
the-
two and
the one
change
with
in
the-
reality.
Oh,
numbers.
the multi-year one.
Dealing with everything.
That's this one.
It's about 3.45, 3.4, 3.4. This, Tara, too, so you understand the history behind this is better than the model that we had produced on our 10-year model that we produced 3 years ago. I mean, these numbers have flattened out. Next year is going to be a challenge as well. I mean, it's going to take what we've established this year. All the departments coming, Board of Ed really pushing behind us, and all the departments, the fire department helping us fund the retirement, the police department using their outside funds. I said it to Dan and probably Ryan this morning, we got to use every tool in the toolkit. And Marcia is great at keeping us in line and in check and guiding that, but I think this is the way we sort of have to go. Again, if we, and you made a statement earlier, and I appreciate your statement, is you came in, you tried to get us down, but we can't go down too far where we're just gonna have to bite this bullet somewhere down the road and catch up. We gotta try to catch up as much as we can each year, so when we do catch up, we can do things. We're not handcuffed coming out of this. We just heard again, $2.3 million for the fields, the rifles came out of nowhere.
We need personnel over
yeah.
there.
So we need to be creative like this and get every department to come together. I don't think trying to get lower is gonna help us in the big picture. I really don't think trying to squeeze this down and taking out something, I think this is the number that is fair, that we meet most of the town's requirements. I don't think there's any department, so I'll go around. Brianna, you wanna start?
Sure. I'm in agreement. I don't have any problem with this number, and I think you're right. I think where we probably need to be. And we're going to have to be really creative in the coming years with everything that's coming down the pike.
Mary,
Yeah, exactly.
Eileen?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I like that we're looking out to the future. I mean, we're not kicking things down the road as far as capital improvements and things like that. But keeping an eye on that, these couple of years ahead of us for sure, and looking at ways of managing that, I think is the responsible way to go. I'm happy with this number.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think, you can be short-sighted here and say, let's take out 100,000 of the field replacement, because we're gonna do that next year anyway and bond it. But what does that do? That puts 100,000 of extra debt next year, and I think that's what got us into this predicament. So I'm fully support this number. We put all the reserves that we think back in. Thankfully, a lot of things were funded by ARPA and helped us. I think that's gonna help us get to being more fiscally responsible in the years to come. So I think that's great. And thanks Tara and Harry for putting the ARPA request for capital type items where, I think that helps the town a lot.
Dan?
I agree. The number we're ending up here, I mean, we'll massage it one final time tomorrow, hopefully I'm very pleased. I've also been keeping a running tally of some of the long-term plans that we've discussed over the last couple of weeks and things that we're going to have to build into the future next year's budget. And similar to what I did this time last year with the budget handoff type checklist of what we're going to do. I'm going to keep this up. I'll send it around and we can add it to it so that, when we sit back down a year from now, we have a starting point. Because I think we're going to be in the position where a lot of it's already ironed out.
What if to follow up on that, what if we asked for a joint meeting between all the boards to do a budget workshop, or a 3-year planning workshop?
Yep.
Get everybody on board. This is what we're facing.
Kick it off.
Help us help you support, because we got to help us support you.
Yep.
So
After summer vacations.
that's
the
what
way
I'm
to kick it
saying.
off,
When it's
yeah.
a little slow before budget season, we get all of us together. Tara, your thoughts on this? Because this is ultimately your budget in the end. I mean, it's our budget, but you got to run with it.
Yeah, first of all, I love that idea. I think that would be fabulous. There's a lot of good things floating around. The idea of keeping the capital committee intact, I think, is essential if you guys are on board with that. As far as the ARPA, that is nothing that, we did as a board of selectmen. Those were proposals that came through, and the ad hoc committee absolutely did their due diligence, and we were just in the position to be able to kind of allocate those funds. So yes, thank God for ARPA this year, but like Glenn, I am worried about next year, the year after, and several years down the road. We all know there are a lot of needs across town, and I think that's where, I want to just ask one last time, you as the board, as elected officials, are we absolutely comfortable with the fact that we've really kind of gotten a hold on what our needs versus our wants are? Wants are nice, they're first world problems, but what are our absolute needs, and does this budget speak to that? Because anything that yes, we all want to live in the fine town that Brookfield is and enjoy it for what it is, and we have a great community. We have there's so many wonderful things about Brookfield, which is why I wanted to do this job. But financially, I think we need to be very as responsible as possible, and we can't be chasing our wants when we have so many needs. So if you as the board are comfortable with where we are here and you feel that we've really done our job, then I'm comfortable with your expertise.
I think the Board of Selectmen's budget took out most of the wants versus needs. No, this is not a criticism. I think the expertise of what we've learned over the years, we put back things into departments based on value back on some of the things that we put in, that we get back, some of the items that we just know have been problems over the years as well that we faced. So I'm pretty confident we may be missed on a few items. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I don't wanna say it's perfect, but I think your first cut as a Board of Selectmen took out a lot of those, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. What we put back in is just us being a part of this for so long and so many years that we tried to also make sure people got supported so we could pass this budget. There were certain things done in there that strategically from history, so it's not a discourse on your thoughts, it's just the collective what we've done in the past history-wise. So I think we're close to that. I won't say we're perfect to what your statement is, but I think we're very close to balancing what you just said. And again, y'all can speak to that. That's my opinion.
There's three things of any impact of changes that we made. One is on various reserves, second is on OPEB, and the third is on the board of ed. Those are the three impactful things that we changed, and I feel completely confident in all three of those.
And a couple minor things, we're funding the fire department
Right.
and EMS, which are volunteers, we need to fund them. So I think that, yeah, I'm on board, I agree.
So I think we're pretty much to your concerns. Are we perfect? No. But I think this is a good number. I think this is a number we can all get behind. I think it's a number that still allows you to manage the town, with Harry to manage the town. Marcia, your thoughts on the number, since you're sitting at our table.
I like it. I thought we used every resource we could with all the different funds. I really like the change in the format of the capital, that we show all of it and we try to pull it all together. So I like where it ended up.
So tomorrow night then, we'll come back and we'll have a motion ready for tomorrow night to pass it. We'll go through discussions again, make sure everybody's all on the same page, everybody's happy. And then we'll make the motion to approve it. And then we remember that we still do have a chance to not correct this, but change it even, at the town meeting. And after the town meeting, we do have another chance. So if we hear something from the audience that we've missed, and in the past, I'll give an example. We missed the baseball netting one time. We didn't understand it for the fields. And we took it out of the budget, and someone wrote us a letter. And it really made sense that we didn't understand the problem well enough, and we put the money back in. I don't. It was like 30,000.
It was 90.
90,000.
It was 90, yeah.
But the letter was to a point where we didn't fully get all the information to us, and we can address those as well. If there's something that the department feels we grossly missed, or the townspeople feel we grossly missed, we can adjust this. So tomorrow we'll be ready to do this. I don't think we need an extra night. I think we're good for tomorrow. We have it on the schedule.
The only open item tomorrow is contingency.
Right, and Marcia is gonna look at the contingency. So, any public comment?
As long as it's not
Harry
heading for a ride.
Shaker.
I
As
know
long as
that
it's
the
not heading
intent,
for a ride.
I know the intent was to go late in hopes I wouldn't talk, but I'm gonna. And this is a filibuster, and I'm not yielding the floor. I will be very brief, thank you. As far as salaries go, and as far as being afraid of possibly getting to a point where we may start to affect salaries and positions, I've lived this through the Board of Education. We have done studies on our own, not major, but say, and in every category, I was on the subcommittee for negotiations 11 of the 14 years. And every single time we went through all five, and we did all 5 bargaining units. When we did comparisons in our DIRT, we were very competitive when you added up the salaries, the benefits, and the fact you're working at Brookfield. And sitting at this table with the 2 attorneys, our committee, and the bargaining unit, and this is where I think the answer is part of the answer, a big answer, to not even thinking about salaries and cutting people. We would sit here and this was best last offer. Arbitration is best last offer. We would be looking at maybe a 2.5% increase for salaries with the bigger, with either teachers or administrators, whatever. And they are coming in at 6 or 6.5. And we would sit there and we would say to them, if you get that, it's going to cost you people. And every one of those people that were on that side of the table were established. They were at the higher end of the market, higher end of the salaries. And they didn't budge. And this is a fact. Ask anybody on that committee. And I think the answer, part of the answer lies in our department heads and our office heads. that they just need, and not that they're gonna take the onus, but when, as Dan says, it's gotta be an emergency. They need to raise their level on what is an emergency and really help us, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, in coming to us with a budget that is, that just a better budget for the department, not to jeopardize the department, but they have to understand that we need to be very careful, and things are gonna cost more. And I think a lot of it is gonna help with workplace, with the attitudes, with how people feel when they come to work. And they just have to be really, I don't wanna say cheerleaders, but really advocates for how good we have it here in Brookfield, both as residents and as employees. And I think they're a huge key to helping us get to where we're not gonna be looking at salaries and positions. Because it's not always like that when you're at the level where you're representing the people underneath you. And I think that's one of the big things that's gonna help us. So.
Well, let's get it right. So, any other public comment? Hearing none, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Without objection.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.